anybody doesn't mind associated with that, we're going to go out of order tonight to actually be able to accommodate. I know there's at least one person that would actually like to get out of here at 6:30 to actually make a varsity basketball game for his son being participating, and I'm willing to entertain that. So, that said, we're going to, while it's set, we're going to drop right down to departmental budgetary needs and capital improvement to be able to cover those items to try to accommodate.
Okay.
Probably Dennis and Kathy first.
Absolutely.
Dennis and Kathy, do you want to come up? They kind of co-mingle.
Absolutely.
Evening, Chris. Same old, same old. Chris?
Dennis, how are you?
Good, so?
What's playing?
Go for it. Who would ever like to jump right in?
Well, for my regular budget, the only change I would like would probably add $200 more to the printing line. It's currently $300. I'd like to bring it up to $500 just for this year. Going to need some new stock property record cards, some new hangers, and I want to be able to print 3 commitment books this year. But other than that, my budget would stay the same. In the long term, you need to do something about storage. I know the vault is full. I have tax commitment books that, by state statute, are permanent records, and they should be in the vault. I have about 8 that are in there now because there's no room. I have tax maps. Again, by state statute, you have to keep, each time you update them, you have to keep the old one. They need to be in the vault. There's no room. I know Twyla's kind of thinking about a mobile filing system for the vault, and that would be something that assessing could take advantage of if she had that. The only thing for long-term for assessing would be at some point a part-time person, maybe 20 hours a week, and that person could be shared between codes and assessing. Probably most of it would be for assessing. And that's about all I have.
Me?
Yes, sir.
Mine's easy. I should be under budget, have been since I've been here. Don't need anything. No capital improvement. I'm good.
Well, thanks for showing up, Dennis.
No, I appreciate that too, because in that regard, we tried to actually get this for the 6 o'clock to accommodate everybody in that regard, and I appreciate all department heads for actually getting here tonight. Capital improvement, I know, doesn't hit typically either of these 2 departments for sure. That topic, trying to come at it prior to the budget, is to better prepare going into the budget. And I use the example, I use it several times associated with this roof. We can do better associated with that because it should be appearing on a capital improvement plan somewhere in that regard for a budgetary purpose. You covered, I did hear about the part-time position. Diane had mentioned that in passing as well. So using that for the sounding board for all departments, hearing about what your longer-term needs are associated with that, so at least we have it. Knowing fully well, no promises associated with it, dust settles, because one need comes at the balance of somebody else for sure, but at least we're hearing what those needs are to be able to enter the budgetary process with a better idea. Salary survey, we'll cover that.
Yeah.
I know we'll talk about that at a later time frame. So
We've got it done for tonight. 30 work, 2.5 days on it.
anything that might come
Good job,
for
Jody.
these 2 departments that might come up?
In, as far as the salary survey, I think, yes. I think you're gonna find, when you look through it, especially the assessor, I think you're gonna see that this assessor here in this town is underpaid compared to the counterparts. That one is the most striking out of all the departments.
page, top
See it?
assessor. Yep.
So what we did on the salary survey is we did a population starting from approximately 8,000 up to 11,185. And it's all over the state. It's not just this county, and it shows you the population by town, the amount of hours per week, and what their hourly rate or annual salary is.
Now, if I remember correctly from our discussion, this is the median,
This is the
current for them?
current. This actually, for all the other towns, it's as of 6/30/2016, and that's what we put on the site as well, but our figures include the COLA starting July 1st. I wanted to have you see exactly what these department heads and employees are making right now. Some of these other towns, if they're on calendar years, their COLA will be included in that, but those that are on a fiscal year probably don't have COLAs included, but ours does.
Okay. Trying to level the playing field a little bit, and depersonalize it. Do we know any way to actually grab, not maybe from this source, but the median wage within that? Knowing that somewhere between 2 years or 25 years is a huge disparity if somebody's been
Right,
pressed out.
yeah, we don't know that from this survey. We have no way of knowing how long
Right.
these people are in this position. So when they do the average, everybody's done an average, except for this one you wouldn't because it's a single person. But when you see some of the other positions, it's an average. So you could have one person just starting and being on the low end, and you can have 5 people that have a lot of seniority on the high end. So it's going to skew. The average is going to be skewed. So what we've done is we've made notations on the pages to show you what the starting pay is for those positions, at least here in Lisbon. We have no way of knowing that from these other communities unless we call and ask.
The 4 that we're using right here, I mean, do we just use population as our guide, or?
I use population as the guide, yeah.
Because I'm just, the reason I asked that question is just kind of devil's advocate. I'm looking at some of the other ones that are kind of in the same ballpark, and there's a few. I mean, if we're at 9,000, we could look at everything from Cape down to Wells, and they're all kind of in that same area, a few hundred over the top. But I just want to, maybe it'd be better to get a kind of a broad scope of all of those and then take a peek. Food for thought.
So I guess I don't understand what you're
So
saying.
we're talking about these 4, and I know, Alan, you said kind of looking at a blended of all of these, and then I know it doesn't factor in the actual
Or somebody's-
senior. Yeah, somebody's been there for 20 years versus somebody's they've been there for
So
5.
you need to contact them and get those.
Yeah, if possible. I mean, if see what we can do to try to get a better understanding. And I think if we're going to go at it, I'd rather go at it with a blended of a larger sampling.
The way we've done it, and this is another alternative for that same methodology, the way that I've seen it applied in Lewiston is you throw up the high and the low, and obviously the next one in Lisbon would be with Caribou, the 102, toss those 2 out, and then pull
then
the
do-
3 closest to see where they're at.
Okay. Yep.
Just trying to whittle it down.
That makes sense too.
Anything else on the salary piece of it that you guys, I know what I'm.
I mean, this isn't the ideal way to do it.
No.
I mean, it's the closest that we can get for nothing, but because we don't know some of those variables, it's hard, especially when you're doing an average.
I personally would like to see Androscoggin County as a whole, like other, you know what I mean? Because the further south you go, the more you make anyways, just because of the region that it's located. So,
Some of these coastal places are pretty rich, and they have a lot of money to throw around that we don't have.
right.
And I think that's why I kind of wanted to get a better understanding of, we can look at everything, and population was a guide here, but we all have an understanding that obviously somebody's getting paid to collect taxes in the Cape might get a little bit different salary than somebody's collecting taxes here. But that being said, doesn't mean we might be surprised at what we see there too. We're assuming. I would rather know. I'd rather have the number in front of me. That way we're working off of fact versus what we assume.
using your logic, Cassie, any of those communities on that list that you would like to hear from or comparable? We don't have Androscoggin per se, but we've got comparable size communities.
I think Topsom's a good one to look at. I mean,
That's the one that stood off the page to me.
it's right next door. It's not like it's way down south or way up north. It's local.
Standish,
Standish definitely was one.
Yeah.
any others that come up?
None on this list.
We should have a starting point. It's probably going to be some exercise for a variety.
Right. Yeah, because these are the same communities we use throughout the whole survey.
Orono might be a good one too. It's seasonal though, unfortunately, in college attitude does fluctuate.
So it's important to find out the years of service. And starting on the other ones that we come across, you know, the starting salary for positions too. Okay.
I think the key here is to be equitable across the board, and I think that getting that length of service helps us do that. The whole reason behind this exercise is to try to make sure that we're competitive.
Anything else?
That and
as it
our
relates to
employees
the
are going to pay
departments?
what they deserve.
Right, exactly.
I mean, like, my question would be how to determine quality of service. I mean, how is that weighed? You know, using towns that relate, say medium wage or population or whatever, maybe a good start. But how do we weigh it? You know, that's my question: is how do we weigh quality? Obviously, I haven't heard many bad things about our assessor, but maybe that's something she could do.
That's going to be a hard one to.
Mm.
I'm going to go back. I appreciate everybody coming. I've already said that. One of the goals associated with this, to have all of you guys sitting here as department heads, is our number one goal by the council this year is increased communication. The way that we explained it on a variety of levels, whether it be the departments or the committees, is help us help you. If it's on your radar screen, put it on our radar screen so it actually comes up at the council level to actually know what your priorities and your challenges are associated with that. I'll speak candidly. The fire department's heard about us from their fund to replace vehicles and maintaining that and their needs for apparatus. Same topic associated with Ryan. The police department with staffing, those kinds of things. Whatever it's on your radar, make it a priority for us. So, one of the other pieces associated with that Diane has heard is we're trying to put qualifiable goals for both her and the department heads, because in that regard is I'd just like not to be able to have it be that you guys are crucified, whether it be through social media or that type of stuff, out of context when something actually comes up that doesn't go somebody's way. In that regard, likewise, I'll use just the most recent storm issue associated with that. I don't know if I really want to spend an exorbitant amount of time talking about the quality of the plowing associated with that in a vacuum. Look at the entire issue that was actually addressed in that 24-hour block, and you might have a different opinion of the way that things actually work themselves out. Could we do things different? Probably. But in that regard, the person that's actually in the best position to be able to do it would be our PW director associated with that, to know how he's doing operationally. And more so is if we know what the goals are for that department throughout the course of the year, the fact is it's a different shift. He's attained what we were looking for on those topics. So the fact is you get a better flavor how he actually gauged his performance. Is that a long-winded answer?
Dennis says, "Are you all done with me?" I'm ready to go.
Yeah, and I know this.
And not at all, did you?
Well, I appreciate everybody for coming. By all means, you guys are all set.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you, Dennis. Thank you, Kathy.
All right,
Who wants to be next?
who wants to go next?
There you go.
Absolutely.
Don't raise your hand at once.
Mark's going to talk to us about a playground. He knows it.
Mark, how are you? Good, man.
The budget that we had last year, I don't expect it to change a whole lot as far as what we need for new things for the rec department. As far as parks go, we have a few things on the agenda, goals. We're looking at doing a playground, which we met with you a couple weeks ago about the plan for that. And talked to Positive Change about our goals for raising money through fundraising and also half of it through appropriations. The other area that we wanted to work with, I don't know, I'm not putting anything in the budget for it, but it had to do with developing a park behind Enterprise Electric. We have access through DOT to cross the railroad tracks there. It's a beautiful opening. The town owns the property. We're talking with the Recreation Committee and also the Conservation Commission about what kind of park we want to develop over there. I see that starting in 2017.
Awesome.
But I don't right now I don't foresee it asking for any money. I think a lot of it can be done in-house. We need to fix the fence at Miller Park. There's a rail fence that's falling down into the river. At this point, it's an eyesore, but it's going to be a safety issue if we don't jump on it this summer. And I don't expect that to be a whole lot of money, but that's going to be something to be increasing my budget. We did get funding last year gave us funding last year for the tennis courts resurfacing. We did get bids, and we got approved to spend about $6,700 on resurfacing the tennis courts. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the capital improvements plan. But that'll be done in the spring. Probably the first week it stays above 50 degrees. I think we'll be able to get the resurfacing done. We're looking at budgeting the Winter Festival. It's about a $2,500 expense, but we'll match that with revenues. I might increase our office supplies by $200 because toner is expensive, more expensive. But other than that, I think we're going to stay close to being on par with last year's.
Would you say it's safe to say the largest ad is the playground then, right?
Playground's the biggest one.
Okay.
Biggest one.
How about facilities and MTM in general? I know you've done a lot extensively with the window, the outside facade, and that type of stuff. Anything?
There is one thing that I talked to Ryan today about. We have a 1955 vintage electrical panel that needs to be updated. And it's about a $3,000 expense that I'm asking Ryan to put in the building's budget.
Okay.
There is one more thing.
No, you keep going.
And Diana and I have talked about this too. I don't know how many other departments have at least 25 people that are working at minimum wage or under minimum wage. We have 25 people last year that were working under minimum wage. So we have, Diane asked me to do a base pay for our summer staff, summer help. And we start them off at $8 an hour when they're first coming in. A lot of them are high school, college kids. And then if you become a assistant supervisor, it's a $10 hourly rate. And if you're a supervisor, it's $11, so it's incrementally bigger amounts. But if we, now that it's $9, and it's going to turn to, what's the next phase, $10, then 11 and 12 in the next few years, then that's going to change my summer budget quite a bit. This year, I have people that have been working for us for 3-4 years that are making $9 an hour. So I have a first-year person coming in next summer going to be making $9 an hour, and a person that's been with me for 5 years making $9.10. something that I've struggled with and how we're going to deal with that.
How much of any of that can be absorbed through programming costs? Or will it have to be absorbed? I mean, that's the one thing you hear associated with the minimum wage increase. Just the article this past weekend with Dunkin' Donuts, and they're already pricing it.
We've got a printout here for the impact, for the minimum wage.
It's a good one, because I think that this is going to be one department that's pretty hard associated with that.
The impact of his department, based on the, well, some of the hours aren't on it, but
24, 25 people.
First 25.
yeah, okay, so the people that do, so $711.38.
Per hour?
No, that's the
Cumulative
total,
total.
that's the total of
So
the
25 he's
impact
talking
of the increase, the $1.50 for most of these positions. Some of them are just a $1 increase. And it shows the amount of hours they worked this past summer.
Okay.
I think this is the next one's mine.
This one isn't yours?
These are all my staff. Nope, these are all my staff down here.
Oh, whoops, I'm sorry. This is, okay, this is the election clerk's up at the bottom. Okay, so it's the next set, $3,030.
$700. Mark came out unscathed. I didn't buy that.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Twyla's budget.
$700.
I was looking at some of the names and I was like, I don't think these folks are working on the playground. I'm just saying.
Twyla's came out not too bad compared to Mark's.
We don't
It's about
discriminate. We don't
3,000.
discriminate based on age.
No, I'm just saying that. I don't see Camille Booker out there running one of the dodgeball games. That's all I'm saying.
So you can expect that amount every year for the next 2 or 3 years, if it keeps going up $1.
Incrementally, because
Yep.
the effect is,
Yep.
that is plus.
Exactly.
So back to the question, how much, if any, can be covered through programming costs? Is it going to have to be?
It can be, and that's one of the areas I talked to Diane about, the fees and charges, and that was one area that is probably at market or below market for price for a summer program, summer playground, day camps. We charge $300, not including trips, and I think there's an area that we could probably go up a little bit in if we needed to cover those charges.
Off the top of your head, here's $300. Off the top of your head, how many people, how many folks enrolled last year?
250.
Okay.
About 250.
It's a great program. I don't want to actually cannibalize it.
No, I'm just wondering, base-wise, how you spread that, if you could spread that across and have it be a reasonable
What's the hit
uptick.
to the
Yeah,
Right.
because the idea is that if it's not affordable, people aren't coming, and so we got to keep it
Right.
on that line.
That's all gonna be going into the fee schedule, which is scheduled to come to you at the next meeting
Okay.
with some changes. So if you want us to make more changes, or if you wanna discuss it,
Meaning us or him?
no, council.
Which how do you go with it?
Well, I think council, I mean, I don't think we're planning any changes to it unless you want us to.
That was just one area we talked about. That would be the way to, the easiest way to talk about how do we absorb that $3,000, possibly spread it across the, but were there other ideas that you had in mind, maybe? Are there ways that we could distribute that across the hit?
I think even the 3,000, I think that the program makes even more than that, so it's not like we'd be losing money.
Right.
If you take it as a business, it would already absorb that money. But what I was talking about was not the minimum wage person, I'm talking about the person that's been there for 5 years.
Right.
And
The disparity, yeah. No, I think we're all, I hear what you're saying. The challenge to you there is you have somebody who has experience, they see somebody walking in who's green, how do I, what am I doing? And I get that. You're going to have to try to have some meaningful discussions on how do we, if we're going to bring those people up, because we're required to, can we look at that across the board for all of the folks that had that experience? Is that what I'm hearing from you there? Okay.
Let me ask a different question. It could greatly inflate this. Using your model, Mark, your first person that makes $7.50 and your last person that makes $8.75, just getting the minimum wage associated with that, was it more equity to be able to not upset that apple cart would be to add $1.50 to all of them? Or is that how it work?
But if you just did the difference of what it is now, you look at $8.75 and $7.50, take the difference of that. You take the $7.50 and put it up to the $9, and then add in that difference to what that person's already making, so that way everybody is still incrementally across the board, and you're still in compliance.
I think we're saying the same thing. I would like to see it that way to not upset your hierarchy.
So you're adding $1 to the,
Well, not so much
Figure out the difference.
the difference between your highest and your lowest paid person. You want to keep it when dust settles after the minimum wage.
The same
to not have that. Now
Same
be a
stretch.
complaint. It's the-
There's got to be a line of delineation too, based on service.
Right.
I think that's important.
That's right. Because the end game, your persons that are making $8.75 have been with you 5 years.
probably 5 years, yeah.
So,
Well, the person that's making $9 has been with me for 5 years.
yeah.
But, so they're gonna get it to, what, just assuming it to,
Under this scenario, but-
0.
Yeah.
So, okay, 0. So now they're getting $9, and the person that's getting, being hired for the first time, going through the first year of training, is gonna be getting $9. And I'm thinking that I might lose.
Well, that's not entirely true, because your staff has been getting COLAs, so the people that are making $9, if there's another COLA, that's gonna,
Right.
where these people won't,
So it
they're
won't
just
be
gonna end up
right.
getting the,
What does that COLA traditionally translate to, though?
depends, spend.
Yeah.
Percent we voted on last year.
Right.
So they're making $9.15 or something like that.
That's what I'm saying. So big scheme of things, if I'm somebody who's put 5 years of my life in and I'm making $9.15 and somebody just walked in making $9, how am I feeling about that? And regardless of, I love it, it's great, Mark's a fantastic boss, I love everybody I work with, I make 15 cents more an hour.
I think it would be worth at least pricing out to see what it would cost if, everybody gets the same bump up. So if the bottom guy, takes, say is making $8 and they get a $1 bump up, then bump everyone up by $1, and at least give us the, money to see what would be the bottom line cost to do that.
Worst case scenario.
Right, is it gonna cost us $5,000 or, $4,000 or what's
So
the
yeah,
total cost?
somebody who's brand new making 9 in the door versus somebody who's got a year of service makes 9.25. I'm just pulling numbers here just for giggles. And then somebody's got 2 years, maybe 9.50, and so on and so forth. The idea is that we look at the amount of service because there's a value there. They know the program. They obviously can do. You can do more with people who know more. So you may get creative with the number of staff. Maybe you don't have to hire as many new people because you keep the ones that you have happy and keep them there. So just food for thought. But want to make sure they feel like they're definitely valued for the service they put in.
I would encourage you to go that way. Do flexibility. Take your lowest paid makes $7.50 an hour. Your highest makes on this schedule the $8.75. I'd add the $1.50 to everybody and gives the same number
All the way up.
all the way up through. Because what I don't want to see happening is actually the quality of programming actually suffer because the minimum wage went up and now there's no equity to actually stay with you for 5 years because they're gonna make that elsewhere when they've got options and they're looking at it.
That's another concern that we have for any part-time, temporary people is that everybody's getting $9, no matter where you go.
Right.
So there's going to be a lot more competition up there for.
Closest I would say to this, your counterpart in Lewiston couldn't find help at $9 an hour last year, and he was paying $9 an hour. The fact is, the minimum wage associated with that. We have less of a need. They have the more green space associated. Everybody's going to be competing with the same number of bodies.
Last year we went to a job fair for the first time and sat there for 4 hours and I got one person out of that and they were a great employee. Still have them. But I hired everybody I interviewed last year, which is the first time ever. That's scary.
Program's successful, it's profitable, and there's a reason you got to hire those folks on. So let's make sure we're getting the right folks and we're being competitive. That's the whole reason behind doing a market survey to begin with.
Yeah, I would encourage to see that. I'd like to see the flip side with your views on programming costs. If we're going to, at the council level, consider actually making any changes to revenue side of things, which I do your budget as well too. So I'd like to have you obviously do a recommendation of things.
I can do a forecast profit loss on the increase in salaries and also a projected increase in the wages or fees to offset that cost. To see how it looks.
Yeah. I think that's the right approach because, I mean, your comment out of context both know that the programming costs can be offset, they're not, the programming costs are gonna offset the $3,000 increase, but the programming cost is actually covering 100% of the supplies and everything else that's actually going through that facility too, so you're eating into what it's actually not covering, just because of the change in the wage part of it. You know, insurance doesn't get any less expensive to run these programs, and all the other services as well too, so.
Facilities, yeah, right.
Anything else on that discussion, guys?
You want us to take the same approach on the
I think we have to, really, in that regard, is to give us the worst case scenario, because,
So add $1.50 to everybody
well,
on the ones that have to get increased.
I don't, the example that stands out here on the page, I'd like, when we do Twyla's, is to hear from her on the election side of it, what's the impact associated with that, because you have fewer folks that are actually paid on the hourly, it's more the total cost of the election for the ward worker to begin with.
Yes.
So, but maybe it might be a different scenario, I don't know if it's on apples to apples.
You could at least give us an understanding of what the uptick would be
Each
from election to election. Yeah.
budget is different because we, like this one, past presidential, you have probably 32 employees, but the next time we budget it, we're going to have, what, 12 to 15. So you're not going to see that kind of an increase, although, like you're talking about with Mark, the person that's awarding all day isn't going to like getting paid the same amount in a couple of years that all the election clerks are getting.
Right.
So, yeah, it's going to have its own
Maybe
impact,
some
but it
impact.
won't be probably an increase you see next year.
Anything programming side other than what we talked about, Mark?
No, I'm just going to maintain status quo and, do another year the way we did. We had a pretty good year this past year.
Knowing that you played multiple hats, how's things, now we're what, 2 years into the program side for your park and parks in general? Again, it's not the best kept secret, we need to get it out there, we need to promote this in that regard. Anything there that's not tapped or on our radar? Beaver Park, anything programming on parks in general?
As far as programming, I don't think so. I think we're using the park a lot more. You can see a lot more groups using the park. The first snow this year, the parking lot was full. It was packed. People were out there snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, and even ice fishing. Social media has been a big help too. We've got we're splashing a lot of stuff on Facebook, our website, and I don't think it's a secret anymore. I don't think Beaver Park's a secret. I think a lot of people are using it, and you're seeing it in our revenues as well. I think that we've met our goal in revenues, which was I thought was a pretty extensive reach for us to almost double the revenues in 1 year for
Nice.
Beaver Park. So.
I have a question on the follow-up to something that was from a couple of years ago. We talked about with increased signage on the trail that I know we've pushed for in the past. That I know there's still not signs up there on many of the major roads, and people have trouble finding the trailheads and the parking lots. So, is there any effort to budget something for what it would cost for signs for, marking those trailheads more clearly for the public?
The what's that signs that we put up?
East Coast Greenway.
East Coast Greenway signs are put up now. You've seen those. They're pointing towards every trailhead pretty much, and I think those are supplied by the state. If you're looking for a big poster sign,
Yeah, look for something, a little
we're
larger.
gonna have to do something, especially if we develop something down behind Enterprise Electric, because nobody knows about that parking lot down there. I mean, it's kind of tucked away, but we need to get people down there, and I think that we don't have to spend a lot of money. It doesn't have to be a huge sign. It doesn't have to be a billboard.
No, but it's something that's visible enough from the road that when people say, I want to go to the Lisbon Trail, they know where to turn.
One of the things in Tracy's budget, she's going to talk about it tonight, is we've got money in there to do a website redesign, makeover, and a branding for Lisbon. And I think that once we put that out to bid and get a brand that then we can make the signs and our banners and everything with that brand on it.
Makes sense.
So
I
that
just want to see it in the capital plan as we go forward, that, if there's a few $1,000s needed for signs, let's, plan for that.
Hello, capital.
As far as, maintenance goes, I mean, Ryan and I work together pretty closely with making sure things are done around town with, his department does, raising flags, they do, trash pickup. He used to do plowing of, MTM. Now that we have a better truck to plow and we have the personnel to do it, we're plowing MTM now, so we're kind of trading off and helping each other ease some areas where, might be tight on his side or might be tight on my side, and we're helping each other out. So I want to continue that. I think Ryan's got some ideas too that can help, in the future to kind of work together better.
Cool. Anything? Last night's discussion with the school committee is one basket of goods. In fact, as some plowing came up, and, talking to Alan, that their contract next year is going to go to $24,000 to do the high school campus. So, using your example, he's having the same pressure you are. I know with MTM, it's about parking and snow plowing in the same thing, because as soon as the snow flies, there's no parking in MTM. So and it's utilized any given day of the week. So appreciate it.
Thank you.
Another volunteer?
Anybody? Anybody?
Good evening, everyone. The library's doing well, just so you know. One of the big goals is for the library to transition into the main Infonet library system. They call it MILS, but it's an Infonet. It's a circulation system and a patron services system. It is a state library-supported consortium. We did a lot of research, and Mrs. Barnes and I really looked at this, and the time is right for our library to move forward into a statewide program. Standing alone doesn't do anyone any good, because when services improve, if you're not part of the group, you're not part of the fund. So we began the process with the state. We're looking at mid-February to begin the transition, like the transition that you will go through with your finance and your system. It's involved, and it looks like it would be mid-May before it's completed. The impact to the budget is not there at all. It's about the same price that we pay for the Mandarin system. Just a little bit over $2,000 a year. It's based on your population, and so that's pretty much a wash for the library department. The immediate benefit to the patron is that they'll be able to order books, audio materials, and DVDs from the convenience of their phones, pads, pods, home computers. Click away, and they'll be delivered to the library. We have 2-day delivery now. We'll reinstate the 3rd day. And if you ordered something on a Monday, you could have it Wednesday. How cool is that? Especially if you're a student or a kid who wants to watch the latest movie that we don't have yet. So that's pretty cool. That's immediate. That's the immediate benefit to our patron. And then as they add more services and different things to this, then we're in this ballpark with them. We're on their team. So the timing was right. The governing board supported this. Mrs. Barnes supported this. And with limited impact to the budget, it's something that we've begun. I guess the downside to this, and it's not a problem for us, I have a wonderful staff. In order to become part of this system, we have to transition all our materials into a 14-digit barcode.
including our patrons, about 2,600. Good news, my staff stepped up to the plate. We started this in November. All 2,600 patron barcodes are done. We're giving them out one by one as they come through the door. We're explaining why they're getting a 14-digit barcode and the immediate benefit to them. They're excited about this, and they said, "Move it forward. Let's go." And we have 37,000 items in our library that will have to be rebarcoded. We're in the process of doing that now. I have a very enthusiastic staff, and we're all working hard at this. So that will be the next goal, is to continue this process until every item has a 14-digit barcode. The other goal for the summer is to expand our summer reading program with a longer session on Tuesday afternoons. That may be just continuing, into like 4 o'clock or something, or a divide, a 1 o'clock and a 4 o'clock. We're finding that there's a group of children that are either in Mark's program and aren't dismissed till later, or they're at a daycare and they're not picked up till later. So if we did an option of an earlier Tuesday and a later Tuesday, we'd convenience more families. We also want to keep the Thursday evening program. That was successful. We were averaging 12 to 15 families, and they appreciated the time with their children at the library. And so our goal is to try to reach as many children and families who want to take part in this 6-week program. We would like to begin to offer, we're going to call it occasional or seasonal adult programs for seniors and adults of all ages that complement the programs offered by the MTM Center and the Lisbon Historical Society, where there's possible programs that could be, there would be some crafts, an adult coloring club, perhaps assistance with tax preparation, and bringing in medical, legal experts and town officials such as yourself and other departments to come and share information with the Lisbon citizens. Come meet the finance director. What does that person do? What can she do to help me? Why would I call her? That kind of thing. So those are the programs that we'd like to bring in. We'd also like, this would impact the budget, but to put all this forward, the possibility of an additional hours to our part-time staff. We'd be looking to meet the program needs and services, 5 to 8 hours additional to one or of the part-time positions, and we have 2. We have a 20-hour position and a 15-hour position, so we'd be looking to do that. And I guess the most important goal would be is to continue our efforts to provide quality library services to the community of Lisbon. Capital improvement, nothing in the immediate future. Our building looks great with the work that you all supported last year. The brickwork is done. The facade is beautiful. The garden is in good shape. I think the Friends are in a position to do some work on the fence this year. And we're looking to bring in a group of students with the 4-H to possibly take on some of the flowers and maintenance of that little garden. So and it wouldn't be this year, but maybe 2 years out perhaps, and I haven't seen Ryan to speak with him on this, I'll probably replace the carpeting upstairs on the first floor. It's getting old and tired. It's not in bad shape, but you can see where there are spots that are beginning to show their age. So it wouldn't be in the next capital improvement, but possibly the next one. And that's all the library has.
With the minimum wage increase, will it impact you?
Both part-time people make $9.67 at this time.
So there's possibly an equity issue again.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
And only for the audience out there that Anybody that comes up here as a department head, you might want to state who you are, in case there's some people out there that are not sure what we're talking about till you start talking.
I was going to do that. I'm usually pretty good,
I
but
know
yes,
it.
you are absolutely correct. I'm Tracy Stuber, Director of Economic and Community Development. Diane had stated earlier in reference to council had approved a $10,000 for us to look at doing some marketing within my department, and that is definitely in doing some branding. Lisbon is getting well known for the trail system, and again with Beaver Park and everything else that's going on. Our website is way outdated. So I certainly would, this is an opportunity to showcase who we are as a community. So I will be coming to council within probably the next month or so. I've got some other things going too. But the goal is basically to go out to bid and have this done in the springtime before we get into the next budget. So I will be looking to spend that money. It was $10,000 that was put aside, so that will be what the RFP will be going out for that. Another one to keep on your radar is for the past, I'm going to say I've been here for almost 4 years. It'll be 4 years in June. And probably since 2012, the Dingley TIF, the Second Amendment to the Dingley TIF, has paid for the Economic and Community Development Department. The TIF comes to basically its end of term of what it is on the books, and this will be for 25 years next year, so FY 2018. The goal is to work with council in order to keep funding, not for just my department, but also for other projects outside of the TIF district that are eligible projects, is that we go back and for the end of the TIF terms, which you can, which is 30 years, go back out for another 5 years. And with that, the town would capture all of it, so nothing would go back out to the company itself. When you have a credit enhancement agreement, you're only can capture on 20 years. So that will be the end of that. So the town will be able to recoup and gain the benefits from that. And it will continue to keep the Economic Development Department going without having to go back through the general fund and try to raise those dollars to keep that department afloat. And I hadn't really spoke to Diane in this regard, but one of the things that I'm seeing is that just like with the assessor as one person, code enforcement one person, I do 2 departments, not just community development, but also economic development. So there are a lot of communities that have not so many that do roles. Some of them are just doing one, and then an organization is doing another. There's a lot going on. There's more that I want to be able to do. I have a lot more goals set that I think will benefit this community. One is within the Brandon is to be able to put together portfolios and packets. I mean, literally, I get phone calls and I'm working with folks, what types of properties you have available. This is what I'm looking for. I have all that within my office, so I'm able to pull that information out for somebody that's looking for space. However, I want to be able to brand us with a packet that I can send to them. I received a phone call from somebody in California. I want to be able to take and say, this is what the community has and the demographics and all of that. So those are the types of things I just don't have the time for. Another event that brings in thousands and thousands of people, and that's the Moxie Festival. And Cassie can attest to this. I have a committee that is so busy within their own lives, and believe me, I get it. They have to support their families, and they have kids that are involved in things. So getting the volunteers, and I'm sure Ross can even attest to this on Positive Change, is getting more and more difficult. Since I came on board, the Moxie Festival fell under the town, under my department. However, there was a lot of staff that was working on that festival. Jody in the manager's office, Twyler in the clerk's office. There was different staff. My goal was to take that away from them. They don't have time to work on the Moxie Festival. They're already short-staffed with other things, so they need to be doing that. Moxie Festival is a year-long planning event. There's a lot to it. This year is a 35th anniversary, and we're not even close. And again, I have a committee of 6 people. So 5. I think that's 5. So I'm having to take on a lot more of that role of doing all of that work, and that's doing the letters to the sponsors, following up with the sponsors, doing all the, working within the entertainment, doing all the logistics. List goes on and on and on and on. We have 3 grants that we have going on this year as well. And again, what I see my time is juggling. So, that's something I guess to keep in mind as we're going, as we get more into bringing people in. I was hoping to do another event. I can't. I just can't do it. I just can't foresee myself doing that because something else is going to shortchange. And right now, the grants are very important. I mean, we've been able to secure a lot of funds this year. So, that's something I guess to think about. I mean, with the assessor and both with Kathy and Dennis and looking for part-time, I would just like help with even just Moxie Festival. So that just relieves some of my, some of my time. So. I know, sorry, we didn't have the discussion.
No, you're doing fine. And then, Christie, anything on the minimum wage in that regard? Capital improvement, you talked about.
Yep.
5-year plan, anything on that horizon?
I think if anything, it's just going to be within the same thing, within the marketing and keeping that going, having, when we're doing grants, we have to, of course, pay for all the advertising, so it's just having those funds available to be able to keep that program going. But within the TIF, that's all can be part of that as well, so that all falls under there. And being able to go after more grant monies, we got a lot of work to do.
You're probably one of the department heads that's in a better position to actually be heard more by the town council because of the amount of grants and the other committees work that actually has to come before us to actually do it. So, anything else you have associated? I've got a good overview associated. Any guys questions from you guys?
So you need more staff.
I told Kathy, oh, share.
Well, and that could work. I mean, if you could fund another 20-hour position, Tracy's office and Dennis's office and Kathy's, they work really close together.
Mhm.
They augment each other in a lot of different ways. So if you could have one staff person that could help all 3 of those, it would benefit us. I mean, Tracy's office is really busy. There's been a big turnaround in the last couple of years, not with just the grants, but there's a lot going on in town. You can look and see what's going on, a lot of positive things.
So, Tracy, it's a year-round process, obviously, as you do this. How much time would you say that you're spending monthly, weekly, prepping for Moxie?
It really comes down to, at the beginning, it's not as bad. But because there's not the volunteers to take on some of this stuff, I'm doing all the press. I have to update the website. Plus, I do a lot of the updating of the town's website, so I'm doing all that marketing as well. I just sent out for the contest that we're doing for the logo design. So I created that flyers, sent that out. And before that, it was a theme design. So I had to, there's all of this stuff kind of beginning of it. It can depend. The letters alone, I mean, when you're talking sending out letters to businesses, you're talking sending out about 300 letters, so you're sitting there with stuffing them in the envelopes. And I think I had committee members one night, Cassie can kind of add a little bit to that.
Let's put it this way. The Moxie Festival this year wasn't even done, and I was getting emails asking for next year.
Sure. No, I'm just trying to.
So,
I'm trying to get a grasp at hours-wise.
What I'm trying to get
or
is just
whatever.
I get it from the committee. I'm trying to get an understanding of how much of this of your time is being
Yeah.
taken with this.
Right now, I would say I probably am putting in as far as for a week, maybe 2 or 3, for the week. But it depends. If there's coming up to a meeting, like for the month of January, we have 2 meetings. And as we get closer, I'm here. I'm here working on Fridays. I'm here working 8, 9 o'clock at night, as we kind of get into closer to that, because I got to make sure everything done. And I've got some projects now that I'm looking at the timeline, because it's pressing of bringing things before you. And I'm thinking, okay, let's see, tomorrow night probably be in, Monday's a holiday, I probably will be working Monday. It's just trying to keep up the juggle of stuff, because it's, I'm my own admin person as well, so.
But for Moxie, it's answering a lot of
It is.
questions.
Yeah.
And if they can't get an answer, it's go to the other avenue, you know what I mean? And not everybody can respond. I can't respond like that to people, so they go to her.
And Cassie hit it right on. That is a big thing. I mean, the committee members are able to do what they can do, but their time is valuable as well. And we beg and we plead and we, I don't know what else to do as far as to get the volunteers. As we're looking at the events, we have to. Our last meeting was spent just a conversation that I had with the committee members saying, you need to look at the events and what you feel is reasonable that we can do and what we can't do, because we don't have the bodies to do it. The event is just so big, and we separate it, so it's not like it's in one location. If it was in one location, I mean, that would be grand, because logistic-wise, it makes it a lot easier. So.
What about, would it work to have the students that need to satisfy their community service volunteer for the Moxie?
We've tried that. I would welcome it wholeheartedly.
What was wrong there?
They don't,
Just didn't wanna do
it's
it.
summer. They want to be able to enjoy it.
None at all.
None at all. I've even gone through other communities.
I have the Winthrop Boy Scouts that come
No
and
longer
help,
Monica Milheim.
and that's all I can get.
There's no longer Monica Milheim, or I should say the position that Monica Milheim filled
Yes.
in the school
Yeah.
to
Again,
coordinate
following
those
the
sort of
logic
resources.
associated with One basket of goods, we lost something locally that was paid for by the school side, that was actually felt by these targeting. Agreed.
So it's not just a budget whack. I'm not throwing that up there just
No,
to
it's
grandstand. I'm
just the point.
making a point valid that when we have cuts in one budget, impacts other areas. This one, for example.
Well, and to go back on that is, I actually was working with Monica,
Yeah.
and she couldn't get any students to help.
She still couldn't get students to.
No.
Okay, well,
Yeah, no, they would.
maybe a resurgence in the push
I,
to make folks to realize that the community service.
Yeah, I mean, like, what's the cost going to be? If we can't get anyone to do it, and I mean, what are we bringing in, and what's it going to cost if you need more? That's my question. Where are the numbers?
Well, I mean, I just been doing it on my own, so I haven't really put together any type of numbers. But to go back with Dennis, and if there's somebody as far as to work with, basically 3 different departments.
Yeah, see, when I just on his face, I was just throwing some notes down here, and some of the things that were jumping out at me. I know you sounds like you've been carrying this with 4 other folks on that committee, depending on how it fluctuates. So 6 people carrying quite the load. My concern, first off, thank you, and then second off, my concern is that as the economic director and developer of our community, I know that I personally,
I've heard that.
I want to see that.
It's odd outside of Lisbon to justify that our economic development person is the actual person that's in charge of the Moxie Festival.
Right.
I've heard that criticism.
Right, and so the thing for me there is not to say that you're not doing a fantastic job, but for me, I want somebody with vision down the line. I don't want your time dominated by this project, because as much as the return, and I love where you went with the numbers, it's a fantastic return every year. We get exposure.
Yes.
It's for 3 days. It's for 3 days. To quantify that, I want you spending those hours looking at. I want to land bad terminal. I want to land a whale. I want us to get tech jobs. I want us to get a company that wants to come here and do business.
Yeah.
And I want somebody who's looking forward to do that. And not to say that you don't do that, and don't get me wrong.
No, I'm not.
But I think that we're looking at, it's a different world we live in, and if we aren't trying to get ahead of somebody else, then we're left behind.
Yeah.
So,
And if we're ahead and we're making money off of it, and we have room to grow, and it's not costing us, then why not have someone focus on, like you said, further down the road?
You've built, you folks, the volunteers that come out every year and do this, and it's the same people because they all realize that there's such a small core that are doing this. Every year the same group of people show up at the same place or wherever they're guided to go by their spouses or whatnot to do the jobs that they have to do every year. So the good news there is that we have this group of folks who get the understanding and general idea. The framework is there. Now, some parts move occasionally, and so you got to accommodate for that. But I think what we do is if we can plan this thing out once and get the core pieces in place, then it doesn't have to be an exercise in futility every year trying to grab a bunch of volunteers. It's just making sure that when we get closer to the event, and I know I'm generalizing and I'm probably making it super simplifying it, and forgive me, I'm not trying to minimize any of that. But I think we have to look at working smarter. How do we do that? And I'm sure there's something that's a question you guys have asked a million times over. So, but we got to get there. We got to get there because I know you want to spend the majority of your time moving us forward, and I know you're good at it. So that's why I'd like to see that happen. That's just me. Sorry, I didn't mean to dominate that. So.
No, it's good thoughts.
I had a question of intent. Was the intent to have the Moxie committee still be its own tax deductible entity?
That was.
Or did that die on the grapevine because we have 4 volunteers?
Basically, that was my initial goal, was to position the committee to be able to do that. It really was, because I've worked on enough other organizations that are able to do events, and they are their own entity. It wouldn't happen, because basically it's because there is nobody to take on all of that responsibility. And then, we've approached Positive Change Lisbon, and I'm sorry, Ross, to put you on the spot, but we have certainly, the committee has approached Positive Change Lisbon, and they're in the same boat because they say, look, they do the concert that evening, but they don't have the resources to be able to take on this festival as large as this is. I mean, it's just not, this festival is known all over. Literally all over, even across the pond area. So, the idea of economic development, and kind of goes back to what you had said, Alan, earlier, is when folks look at economic development and look at the fact, why is the director doing an event? That's part of that. The idea of it is that, I get the grand opportunity to speak with folks that have never been to this community before and say, hey, what do you think of the community? And, that's my opportunity to market them. It's no different than going to a chamber event, and I get to shake hands with 300-400 people, and say they know who I am. It's the same idea. It's a way of promoting, and it's a way of marketing, and a lot of the communities do have that, but they have other people. We are a Main Street network community. Again, I can't do anything with that because we are not set up to do the full downtown Main Street. And mind you, we're looking much better in the downtown area as far as folks coming into the area, and we're getting there. And I continue to work with those folks at the state level. But it's getting the others to buy in, and that's really what it is. They need to buy into it. The businesses need to buy into it, and that is an organization that runs on its own. They do their own funding and raising their own funds. They have usually a director that does all that for them. It's kind of like that, a little bit of a chamber, but it's just for the downtown areas. We can't do that. We're just not in that position. I think as for me, for going forward with having a new council or new counselors, is what do you foresee? What are your goals, and what do you want out of me as a community's economic and community development director?
That's why I wanted to ask you. Yeah. Well, let me ask you, because I want to know where you are now, where you think you could be as far as growth. Do you think that we could grow the parade? Do you think we can grow much further as far as spectators?
I think within the parade, it's like anything. It's really, you got to change things up. when you
So-
have the stale, same old. This year, I actually see the parade being much larger, is because the theme is dedicated to the military and to the first responders. So that in itself is going to be the draw.
Okay, so you think you can grow? Do you think we can
My
get
neck hurts.
better sponsors?
Sponsors is always difficult.
Do you think we can do it?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So, if you think it can be done, I'm all for more staff personally. I think if we can have you focus on growing the parade, growing the sponsors, and then bringing the revenue, then and the numbers add up, then I don't know what you guys think, but that's just initially what pops in my head. Grow the staff and have her focus on what's really growing the parade, what's really bringing in the revenue.
I'm going to kind of piggyback on that a little bit. I know that you didn't come prepared with this, and he had asked about it earlier. I want to get a general understanding, and this could be homework or research or whatever. What does the Moxie Festival cost? What's the return? That's what I want to understand a little bit better on that.
The Moxie Festival, and again, it depends because I get each committee member to kind of give me a budget, but it can run anywhere from 25 to 30,000, and that depends on how much you want to put into it. One of the things that we get is that we're losing folks is because we have a budget of $2,500 that comes out of my budget for the fireworks. I talk to the committee and says, okay, we've got a little bit put aside, so we need to add more funds to the fireworks. Is because that everybody likes fireworks. What kid doesn't like fireworks, or what adult for that matter? You know. So again, as working with the committee and trying to come up with some different ideas, that's what it's based on. But in doing that, if you don't have the bodies to run the event, then it gets crazy. Cassie does the vendors. I mean, you know, when you're running from MTM to the downtown, Gina does the parade, does an outstanding job of the parade. I don't have to worry about that. I know I don't have to worry about vendors. I don't have to worry about parade. What I have to worry about is all the administrative stuff, all of the little details to things of getting it, because I don't have anybody in my office that can do that. So that leaves me that, okay, the only way this is going to get done is I have to do it. I can guarantee you can ask anybody at the Moxie Festival. They have a grand time and a great time, but they have no idea
Goes into it.
what goes into it, nor the amount of people that really put it on, and we're very successful with it. I'm proud.
This is where I was driving with on those questions, that if obviously it's profitable. If it's profitable, which I'm pretty sure we all agree, most likely that's going to bear out. Profitable, then why can't we ramp up with some sort of seasonal staff as we get within, I don't know what the timeline is, I'm just spitballing here. Within 90 days of the festival, we ramp up to get you those administrative personnel that you need. They're seasonal folks, but and that way we don't have to take, if and when we add somebody into the assessor / code enforcement office, I don't want to ask that person to assume a hat and all of a sudden find out that the time that they should be spent in those two offices, they're spending picking up Moxie stuff. I think that we look short term and say, how much do we make? How much does it cost? And if does it make sense to bring in some seasonal staff and identify a time frame? Well, that's why we build it out. And if we do this once every year, it's not going to be an exercise in futility to try to figure out how we're going to do it again, because we'll have a plan in place that works, and we can just, all right, we got to ramp up and get our 5 seasonal, and then maybe we find volunteers, or not necessarily volunteers, but find folks who are willing to commit to it because they realize it's not this open-ended thing that I come in and I volunteer, and all of a sudden, and no offense, guys, there's a dump truck of crap that just landed in my front yard that I got to do now. All of a sudden, that's a lot and very overwhelming for a volunteer, and that would make them run away. Whereas if you get some people they're paid to come in and be this seasonal employee to help bring the festival up to speed, if the festival's profitable, then we have a way to pay for that staff, and there's no additional burden to anybody else.
Well, the biggest thing within the festival basically always broke even. I changed that. Because I made the committee say, you have no budget, you start at zero. The idea of it is you raise the funds that's going to pay for the festival. And then whatever is left, you have a contingency. So the idea that the committee they're trying to upscale everything. So they want booths, and they want booths that say Moxie on it. So when they're down selling T-shirts or whatever, they've got this nice booth. We've done some trade shows and things. They want marketing materials that they can drop off down to Kittery. I've already had conversations with the Maine tourism folks about taking some information and pamphlets or whatever and getting them out to all of the kiosks and stuff. So it's those types of things. So there is that little bit, but again, they literally, and I say, zero budget. The idea of it is that we get out there, we do get our sponsorships, and we raise the funds that we need. So, and my original goal for doing that was to be able to have those funds basically put the festival on its own. So there'd be that, a little bit of a fun balance, if you will, for them to be able to move forward. But it's just, if the bodies aren't there to take that and say, okay, yes, we'll kind of take this on. So.
How many spectators do we get?
I think
Last year, wasn't it like,
Sean could probably.
Typically, we kind of estimate that we're in the 30,000 range for the whole weekend. So we get plenty of spectators.
How do we market that? I mean, who else does that? Who else does that? I mean, there's.
At Heritage Days.
you had the Clam Festival.
Clam Festival, one I was thinking of, I made a note right here, how are they getting it?
We've had communications with the people who do the Clam Festival.
Yeah.
We don't have the bodies, we don't have the finances to do what they do.
I think we,
I don't want to break
Go ahead.
up.
Can I,
Please,
I
dive
don't,
in.
just from an outside perspective, I know several years ago, Tracy, you were involved in this, and I think you were here at the time. There was a discussion about a professional event coordinator coming in and running Moxie for us. The council, at the time, the council shot that down. Personally, my personal opinion, not for PCL, I think that was extremely short-sighted. I think that a professional event coordinator not only has the contacts with all the fundraisers and the sponsors, because they do this around the state, but they then free her up to do what we want her to do. They free her up to bring business to town, which is, in my opinion, what she should be doing. And I think Moxie, I mean, again, you kill it every year, no question. But the reality is you can bring in a professional that not only raises extra funds, but raises their own salary through that process. And you can set up a contract where you've got a minimum net that the town gets, which you know what it should be, and that person runs this event. They'll still need volunteers. They won't bring in a whole staff, but they'll bring in the skill set and the contacts in the large fundraising organizations, Poland Spring, Coca-Cola, that kind of stuff. They'll already have those established relationships. I think it's really worth thinking about.
it becomes the crown jewel that you can, you talk about it now when you promote us, I know that. But it'll also be, it won't be the hamster wheel that you're a slave to every year to try to get, so you have it up there. That's the key. I think that's, for me anyway, it's like just taking a look at it for face value. And I think the an overseeing role is ideal and fundamental for your office. I think it's important because you have to maintain that relationship. If we go with a professional event coordinator, they should be reporting to you. You should be understanding exactly what timelines are where we're at, so you can coordinate events around that to line up the best way to promote this community. So I think it's something just the role changes for you and get you where I'm sure you want to be, and we would love to see us be as well, which is something that every year isn't something that is going to be, how are we going to pull it off again this year?
If you don't mind, because Sean's been involved with this from the beginning as well, if he can.
I was the chair for a few years, and I know exactly, and everything is basically that, what we're saying. To go back, what we were talking about hiring, we talked to the Bath Heritage coordinator to come in and offered, and we talked to it was selectmen or whatever at that point. And it was like $20,000 to have him actually come in, and it would have been all funded through, they would have figured all that out. What that would have done is, what I was looking at was exactly what we had done, and she's already done what we established as the committee, and everything else needs to do their parts, and vice presidents and all that type of stuff is to loosen it up so that we can do our jobs, what we're supposed to be doing, and try to do. So, it's been there, and it's always out there, but it's always the number one problem, and it's the same thing I'm going through right now is bodies. So that is the biggest issue that we have, and trying to get people. We've had the local church groups, we've had, and it just goes full cycle. You can only dump a truckload worth of stuff on them so much before they finally go, my time can be used elsewhere. So.
Well, and the other thing, when I see, it's always the same folks over and over again. I even say, look, you don't have to come to any meetings, just show up that weekend. And I will work with you, do whatever. So, anyways, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
I think we should look more into what he said. I see a lot of opportunity, Moxie. I'm sure all of you agree.
We are already in January, and it's closing fast. So I think if we're going to talk about taking a new course of action, or at least exploring one, think we should put a timeline around it. And I know I don't want to dump any more on your plate than you already have there. But it's worth a look. And at least that's my take on it. It's worth a look. Because I think that we've done it the same way for a while now. Let's try to see if we can at least get an understanding what it would look like if we tried to go a different route.
One of the sound bites that you brought out, I'll turn it back to Cassie, $2,500 for fireworks. Is this trying to actually add growth to the festival? One of the ideas that's come up through the committee this year is to augment the Friday night aspect. I set it up and thought,
So one of the suggestions is we have a $2,500 budget for fireworks. We all know $2,500 doesn't get you crap. So it's the opening big thing for Moxie Festival to draw more people in and to get more people enticed to come the next day. We want to start off with a bigger fireworks display. But in order to do so, we need to find the money, and just 5 people on the committee, we can't raise that type of money. So we were looking, I had made the suggestion maybe that council could look into the end of the year budget, see if we have any extra funds left over, and instead of throwing, taking $2,500 out of that extra fund, instead of throwing it in fund balance or whatever, move that over to the Moxie Festival as an economic development to help promote.
What about retailers with fireworks?
We have to go out to bid.
Sponsors, we've tried it. Budweiser, I tried to have everything. I tried to have it covered.
No way to market it.
I have had some ETTI one year did Enterprise Electric.
I knew that they would.
No, I mean like actual fireworks, the stores, retailers.
We have to go out to bid for fireworks.
But them sponsoring it themselves. I mean, as in them coming in.
Commercial show, so you have to have a commercial company do it, and you won't have a vendor, a fireworks vendor that sells non-commercial type fireworks.
Right.
Do that, and they won't be able to give a big enough show. There's a definite difference between a commercial and consumer.
We could,
I've seen some consumer shows that rival that.
Right.
Yeah, right.
one of the other things with it is too, is promoting the community, and when you have, the businesses are always getting tapped out.
Right.
They are getting hit over and over and over and over again, and it's always, whether it be the Moxie Festival, whether it be programs that Mark's doing, or whether it be, Positive Change Lisbon, and now they're going to be building a playground, which I think is a great idea, but it's going to be the same thing. So it's, the idea is you've got to go outside of that. So, you've got to think outside of the community, and the committee, I will say, have been very good as far as in addressing that and looking at going out for other resource. In regards to the, within the fireworks as well, is that within how my budget is set up, also within the TIF thing, is that not all those funds come that, are for me. So what's left of the TIF dollars, or whatever, is in the account to continue to be used for those purposes, and that is this TIF, everything within economic development and promoting it. It's the same thing as we're working with the downtown revitalization grant and doing that. We can't use those grant funds for signage. However, I'll be able to use TIF dollars to do those signage and to get, a kiosk and, get to where people can get to the trail system. But it's really, the goal here now is to get that marketing piece done, is because, that's something that Positive Change Lisbon can use, as something more can you be able to use. Everybody throughout the community is going to be able to use that brand on everything that we do. And it's really, taking Lisbon into the next level, and that's branding this community, which hasn't been really done yet. So those are things that I would like to work on.
Yes, thank you.
any other questions, guys?
I'm stuck in there.
There we go. Here's our Huckleberry.
He's not even messing around. He says, I'm next.
We're going by budget size, and I'm the next smallest. The other two are going to be the bigger. Sean Galpo, Fire Chief of Lisbon.
Okay.
Thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you very much.
budget-wise, as far as the regular budget stuff, we really don't have anything that's on the forefront. Everything that we're able to do as far as equipment and everything else kind of falls within my budget. The biggest thing that we had was those the new SCBA upgrades that we did a couple of years ago that were ongoing, and so that fell within the budget. And we've been, as far as equipment and everything else, as far as regular equipment, not meaning apparatus, we're sitting pretty well with that. So my biggest discussion is, well, twofold. If we're going to plant some seeds, I'm going to plant the seeds for infill structure again, and that's fire stations. We're in two vintage 1960s or older fire stations, and at some point we're going to have to address that. You know, that's down the road. So,
How far down the road? What are you thinking?
I guess that would have to be what the economic climate of the town is. You know, it's what your job is to do is to prioritize what needs to be done and how and that aspect.
So you're saying, and I get it. I'm trying to quantify this a little bit.
There's a couple different values that we could talk about there. You know, I could say, well, building newer fire trucks and putting them in vintage 1960s stations doesn't work. But we can build fire trucks that actually fit in the station now, so that works. I know that I can tell you right now that what we did at the Lisbon Falls station with Truck 6's bay, lowering the door, the apparatus floor, and all of that is not going to happen again from us doing the work. That will that we don't have the time, you know, and we're not able to do that effort again. So, are they structurally sound? They are, but again, we're getting to the point where call volume and everything else comes into play, and you know, at what level are we going to transition into having more people in the station and being able to move forward? So I can say we can get another 20 years out of the stations. I can feasibly say that. Are they going to be falling down around us? I mean, it's infrastructure. We have to take care of them. You know, of course, like we're dealing with the roads and everything else. So this building, so they have to be done that way. So. And then is always that discussion of, a central station, you know, one centralized location station, and to be able to do that. So their operations come into play. You know, I would hope that you as a council are on the same sheet of music that I'm on, is that our level of service, you know, doesn't change at all. You know, we're at a good level of service right now, and whatever we do structurally doesn't change that. Where, you know, you don't want to take a step backwards with public safety, right, with life safety. So,
what do you think about the central location? Could you elaborate more on that?
Could work. I'm not opposed. Steve was all over, and he had planted a few seeds about Central Station and everything else. And I can tell you right now that a Central Station on Route 9 is not a centrally located station. You know, it's a new station for the Lisbon Falls Fire Company, and we either, you know, diminish E.T. Smith Hose Company or whatever. A centralized location station where both houses are working out of one could work. I'm not, you know, operationally we could make that work.
Have you had any thoughts on location? Where you think that would be?
Anywhere
best?
on the 196 corridor in the Lisbon Center to Two Rivers area.
What about?
Now think of land in that area.
Yeah, right.
So there, you know, Route 9 Mill Street.
Yeah.
The Mill Street location is if, you know, an operational wise, we have to look at that. Is if the station is, if we're running per diems and you know, it's manned, we're getting 2 trucks out right off the bat, and then we're supplementing with everybody responding to the station and the other trucks going out, then operationally there's no change. I mean, we're actually probably getting out a little bit faster than what we are now. And actually that, you know, coming down Upland Road, the Upland Road corridor and the Webster Road corridor is a little bit easier. It's not 196 and the guys. We are going to have people coming out of the gross developments, Houston Park and everything else, that are going to, you know, pose an issue crossing a major intersection. But, you know, for the most part, I'm going to knock on wood. We've been very good about people responding and not causing any issues, you know, as we go. So it's where and how.
Yeah, and the other stations, what can those be used for? Can you know, can those be sold to someone that for? You know,
The library would like to move into the Falls station.
Right.
The library would like to expand into the
Now,
Falls station.
you know, ideally, do we lose? There's 2 issues. If we're going to talk fire stations, and I only want to do a blurb, but if we're going to talk about fire stations, operationally, the way we operate right now, and we have for the last 100 and how many years, 2 stations is a good way to go. Oh, okay, we used to have 3. The village, I mean, Lisbon Center had a station too, but that was way back when. There's very few people that actually remember that. So, but the idea, no, you don't. So the idea of that was, one would be relocating Lisbon Falls Fire Company off of Main Street. Where we're at right now poses nothing, you know, it intrudes on our neighbors. The library is very good about working with us, and so is the sausage store. You know, once a year I have to go over there and we have our discussion and everything else. But when we have a fire and everybody's really good about, hey, they've got a fire going, so there's cars all over the place parked in every, you know, funny which way they go, but they understand, hey, they're doing the service and we understand that. So, you know, if we're going to stay the 2-station concept, getting them off, you know, off of, and then the Route 9 isn't such a bad idea, because now they're all going out the back way out of Houston Park, going up, hitting Route 9, and right there. And Route 9 used to be accident alley for us, but since they redid the road, it's been actually pretty good for it. We haven't had a lot of accidents there. So, you're at a good point with E.T. Smith Hose Company. There's plenty of room right next to that station in the parking lot to build a station. So you could actually be building the station while that one's still in service. Pull the trucks out, back them into the new station. The new station is actually feasible for going left or right down Village Street, the way it should be, instead of having to pull a UE to go down Village Street. That used to be an island for anybody who doesn't know that. Road used to go right by it on both sides, so it was an island all by itself. So, and then over time it grew into what it is. So that property doesn't have to be found. We already own that. So that could be done. You know, so, but like you said, it's what direction and what strategic planning is going to be done in order to make this.
And cost.
Yeah, you're talking,
Because
you're talking about operating a 2, still maintaining a 2-house system that way.
Right. You know, now you're going to be there's going to be a better cost benefit to both of them. You know, as far as service, and their services will be better, the heating will be better, and you know, right now we're at a.
And what can we get out of the old station if we were to move?
Beautiful library in Lisbon Falls.
Total number of trucks, just because I'm not familiar with
10.
So if we go to the 1, we get a house, 10 vehicles.
And you can double stack. You know, so there's all kinds of different.
Would have been good to have this discussion before we voted a couple of years ago about that building. Sorry.
Let's not take 3 steps back.
That's a dark corner right
I know, I like it. I'm sorry. Sorry.
I appreciate the perspective, too.
I think you know, in my ass, I've never really pushed that, and for anybody who's been around here, I've planted the seed. We've had the discussion. I've never really pushed it because I don't feel the town that you can sell that economically right now. We have other things infrastructurally that need to be done.
Yeah.
Right, roads, priority.
Yeah, I don't think we're there
You know,
yet.
I understand. Fire engines, priority. And I'm only saying that because we're going to have that discussion right now. But, you know, that's the type of stuff that, how can you give a straight face value? Can you, you know, defend us out there on the corner going, well, no, this is, you know, right now you can't. There's other stuff that really need. We're at a dire straits, that stuff that hasn't been taken care of over the past few years that needs to be taken care of.
Well, that's why I asked if we move to a new station and it's better, but is the old station profitable, or can we sell it? I don't know if it can be used. Maybe we could break even. I don't know. I'm just curious.
Right.
What are the numbers? Could it work? I don't know.
I don't know. That would be Tracy's idea. But now you have, you know, we're using the old ambulance barn, 385 Lisbon Street, that, you know, for storage right now, and that's going to, at some point, we're probably going to end up taking storage out of that.
Ryan's going to be talking about that topic because that's failing over.
Right, because that's failing, and you know.
Yes.
So, is there use for it? There is. At that point, I'm going to be in a new fire station, so I'll be. You know,
yeah, and we could do it. Maybe we could break even. I don't know. You know, could we sell it to someone? Could that be useful? And would they pay for it? And then we can move over to something that we already own, and whatever the cost is to transfer, maybe it could happen. Maybe it won't cost us. Maybe we'll make money. I don't know. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. It's like maybe if the numbers add up, then they do. You know.
Right.
Let's shift to apparatus.
shift to apparatus. So I have a whole presentation as far as apparatus is concerned, but it's too long for this, so I'm going to give you just some bites to think about and to the. Everybody's familiar with, majority of everybody here is familiar with the apparatus program that we established in 2004. It's ongoing. It's been doing very well. It's taking care of the refurbishment of our apparatus. It's been underfunded, and everybody knows that it's been underfunded. And so I think we're at a critical crossroads right now in the fact that we are going to have that account's going to take a major hit if you choose to still make it the replacement account coming right up, because Engine 7 is slated for 2017, but it won't come out of this budget. It'll be coming out of the 18-19 budget because it takes us a year to build a piece of apparatus. So we're planting, actually I'm giving you a little tree that this is growing now. But because it's slated to happen. So that program, Engine 7 is the next one that comes up. Engine 2 is right behind that one. Everybody knows the tanker is out of service, so Engine 2 is going to take the place. Engine 2 is taking the place of the tanker right now anyway, but it's going to be built. Our goal is to build that more as a better tanker instead of what we have for Engine 2 right now. For those of you who are calling trucks. So, that in mind, I think the critical part of the crossroads is here. It's been underfunded, and for what it's been underfunded for, I think we have to make the decision that it becomes just a straight refurbishment plan. So it funds and takes care of the maintenance and the half-life refurbishment on our fire apparatus. So we're getting the 20 and 25 years out of them. Typically at half-life we try to do it around 10 to 12 years. We it sends it out just like Engine 1 and Truck 6 are doing, so that we buy that time so that they last what they need to last. And with that, funding would be just about the same that you guys are putting in now. We could stay consistent and be able to do that. The problem with that is that there's no replacement in that. So replacement costs would have to come from a different area, whether it's bonded, whatever the rates are, or however the council decides to do that. It could still be the refurbishment or replacement account, but it's going to have to take a lot more money to be put in that yearly in order to keep that up, because now you're actually taking out, it could supplement monies, or it could pay for the whole apparatus. Originally, it was to pay for the whole apparatus. That, we set that up that with interest and everything else, it paid for, for what we forecasted for monies, for funding, and actually have been pretty close to it. It would pay for itself. But economic climate kind of squashed that, so council's decided to put less money into that account.
What is that account currently at?
I would have to actually look to give you. We have enough to actually. We could actually buy Engine 7 out of it, but that account's gone at that point. And then with that, you have Engine 2 that's coming up, within the next 2 or 3 years. And even with that, I have in my presentation is, I'm giving a couple options out there, and the fact that is it worth going after 7 and 2 at the same time to get a reduced rate, buying 2 at the same time, or is it better off just let's do 1 and then understand that once engine 7 is built and it's backed in, that we're starting on Engine 2 right off the bat, so that it's that. But of course, all of that you have to think of is what Mr. Layton has and what Chief Hagan has in his capital plans, and where we fall into that, and where roads fall into play, because roads are definitely, I think, so. That's kind of it in a nutshell. There's a lot more to the refurbishment program, and replacement program. The biggest one is that that I'm going to push is that we're replacing Engine 7. It's time to do that. I have the numbers to back all that, and that'll be. It's out of the 18-19 budget, but fair winds is that that's coming. So we need to think about how we're going to finance that.
How far out is the ladder truck?
Ladder truck, I hopefully won't be here when that happens. It's 2025-ish. Hold on.
I'm just trying to think, because I remember you talking.
2023.
I remember you talking about that one's gonna be well over $1 million when.
I want to, if we stay with what we have right now and with a quick concept, which I think we've adapted very well to that with a pump and a ladder on it, we're looking at close to $1 million.
So that's why I think I ask you that question because we're at 17 now. 23 will be here before we know it. So
I'm in hopes.
Now is the time when we want to, if we're going to talk about keeping this as a replacement and not a refurbishment plan, then we should be at least considering that.
Or even splitting it at that point, at least saying, hey, refurbishment, we're going to reduce down to giving you a certain amount of funding a year, but we're going to start saving
Ramp
for,
up, yeah.
that one, and the replacement account now is that instead of, them working out of one account.
Just something to keep in mind. That's the only reason I brought it up, in case we try to figure out which way we need to go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Minimum wage doesn't really hit bench too, but what I would actually like to go for would be challenges for you for training initiative, to be able to get the bodies you need.
Recruitment retention is at the forefront strategically this year. Is that we're taking a great. We're at our manning right now is 40s. We're not doing too bad, but we always need more people. A lot of that has to do, I think, with we require that as a minimum they take their firefighter 1 and 2. That's 200 hours. That's a lot of time. We understand that. They have 3 years to do it, but a lot of people look at that and go, "Ooh, wait a minute." With kids soccer and scouts or whatever that's going on, that's a lot of time. We have 2 individuals right now, newer individuals that are going to be taken. We have another option. We have the Tri-County program that lasts 6 months, 4 months, Sundays and that type of stuff. And now Maine Fire Service Institute finally brought back the full-time academy, which is a 2-week straight academy. So we have one individual that's doing that, it's taking vacation time. That's how we used to do it. Take vacation time, go get your training, you're done. You get your certificate, yay, now you can put your hand in the cookie jar, we're good. As opposed to going weekends and everything else. Same program, same training, it's just too different. With us changing to the pay per hour, I was thinking, we're getting paid pretty well per hour. I was hoping that was going to get us, really, and get enough people involved or wanting to go, I'll do that, but it really hasn't. So we're looking at manpower drives. The junior program is starting to come back up, so we're going to be hitting the high school and the junior, senior class, individual students to say, hey, this is a good career choice, and even if it isn't a career choice, it's a good hobby. If you want to get out and serve your community and that type of stuff. So training, I'd be all for initiatives. If we want to set up somehow, they're being paid for their training because they have to, when they're on the clock, they have to be, so that's, we've worked all that into it. But I think the time, everybody knows volunteerism is down. That's nationwide. And the fire service is just one of those that takes a real hit on it. And we're not truly volunteers, but you have to volunteer to be part of the department. I mean, you have to want to do it. And usually once you're bit by the bug, then it doesn't matter, you're there, and it's going to be it's a lifetime type of thing. But for the most part, just spurring the interest is hard. And I would love for the town of Lisbon to be able to figure out how we're going to fix that, because it's going to be a nationwide model at that point. We're all going to be rich, but that's
kind of where I was going with that.
Having
read that it's a national statistic associated with the volunteer fire departments, the article that was read is preaching the fact that they're a thing of the past because they're being squeezed out because of this and the competition from the staff department.
And we're not, I can't say that we're hurting, and where we hurt is our total numbers aren't really hurting, but you got to understand that at 5 o'clock in the morning, this morning we had a 5 o'clock in the morning call, okay? We have guys or individuals, people, because we just females them, that are, I got to be at work in an hour, so I probably can't go jump the truck right now because I'm going to be late for work, and so we have those windows, and that's what we're trying to, not the 5 in the morning window, but that's where our per diems come into play, that we're making sure that we have a driver there daytime so that we know we're going to be able to get a truck out and to be able to do that. So in that aspect of it, we're gonna have to start looking at, okay, having a driver and another, having two drivers on, or having, expanding those hours, those per diem hours, to be able to man the stations more, to fill the holes,
Thank you. Anything else, guys?
Applications. You guys would have to shave. That's not good. Sorry.
Yeah. I told you I had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, right?
That you chose to do.
I did.
At your wise age.
It was all volunteer.
Or lack of wise age. So I just married one off. So you're,
You'll still be here in 6 years. As you said, 2022, you'll still be here in 6. Not that old yet. Ryan, staying for the whole show.
I was told the new guys had to wait till the end, but apparently a little earlier. So, thank you, Brian. Mark Hagan, Chief of Police. And I basically have 3 issues that are outside of our regular budget that I wanted to talk about tonight. The first 2 are safety issues, and then one's more of a managerial and liability issue. So, first one that I'll be asking for this year is a radio system upgrade. And I was aware before I came here 4 months ago that there were some radio issues. I'd heard numerous complaints from officers that they couldn't get out on their portable radios to the dispatch center. So, needless to say, since the 4 months since then, that's all I've repeatedly heard complaints about. And to be honest, it is a safety issue. I joke about it a little, but it is a safety issue for our officers. I'll give you a brief history if everybody would like it, because this is what's been explained to me by not only our officers, but our radio company, Dirigo Wireless, which is, we had what was called a simplex radio system, which is basically, I talk on my radio and somebody else on the other radio hears it, nothing else in between. In roughly 2013, we switched to a repeater system, and we put on Ridge Road or Route 9 on a CMP easement, we put a small cabinet on a utility pole temporarily with a repeater on it, so that the officers, wherever they talk, radio would go up, hit that repeater, and then come back down to the station. So one of the issues I've been told was, I mentioned it already, we put it temporarily on a pole until the water tower was built. So I'm new to the area, but I haven't seen a water tower up there, and I was told that that was never built, so it has stayed on the utility pole. The other issue it's been explained to me is the equipment that was put up there, the repeaters and the filters, were commercial grade and not public safety grade, so they're not adequate. And the filters basically are supposed to, in a nutshell, filter out the other people that are on our frequency or near our frequency. And for those that aren't aware, the VHF band that we're operating on, that everybody's operating on, everybody's right on top of each other. It's not much room, so you need good filters and a good repeater system to be able to communicate without hearing everybody else. So I was told that the equipment we put up there wasn't up to grade, and it hasn't worked out for us. We are operating right now at what's called low power. Due to the congestion on the frequencies, we're not even operating at normal power. We're on the same frequency as Livermore Falls, so if we operate at the normal power, we're going to be walking over them, causing them safety issues as well. There's also an unknown entity causing interference with our radios. Dirigo has stated that they can look into whatever the interference is and who it's coming from, but they've warned me that it'll be pricey, which is roughly $1,000 just to look into, and once we find out who it is, there's not necessarily anything we can do about it, because again, everybody's so condensed that if they're operating within the correct parameters, they're operating within the correct parameters, and the FCC won't do anything about it. So, long story short, there are no cheap fixes to this issue. We've gone around and around about it. One of the other issues that was brought up was another tower was reported to be put on the top of the high school for another antenna.
Dirigo stated, they suggested it be put on top of the high school because nobody could get out of the high school and transmit out of the high school. It ended up being put at the Lisbon Falls Fire Station, and apparently it didn't solve any of the issues. So that's another part of the issue. So what they're suggesting right now is that we move, first of all, we purchase public safety grade equipment, and that we move it off of Route 9 back down to the station here. And what they're stating is, and I'm no radio expert, so I'm going with what I've been told by Dirigo, is if we move to a lower location, they said up on Route 9, we're on top of a hill. Great location for transmitting. Not a great location when you're on top of everybody else's frequencies, so we're transmitting better, but we're also getting everybody else's interference because we're up there. So they believe that if we move a new repeater and filters down to the station here, that the lower location will minimize interference without causing a degrading performance. So that's what they're suggesting, but that's with a roughly $34,000 bill.
So is that's what you're asking for, or are you asking for a different altogether radio system upgrade from, or is this that?
I'm going with what they're suggesting, which
Is there anybody other than Dirigo? Is there another game in town, I guess is what I'm saying?
Not in town. There are other communications companies out there, but here's the issue. Nobody else is going to want to come in and just, at our request, look at everything, try to figure everything out without a guarantee that we're going to switch to them, or that they're going to say, yeah, no, Dirigo is correct, and we'll say thank you, and we're not going to give you any business. So that's the issue we run into with trying to get another company. So the full upgrade, is that $34 grand? Everything, moving everything here, part of that, plus radio, or does that include the radio? That's what they're telling me, is that it's actually $33,500 to move, to upgrade the equipment and put it here. One. Second issue is I'm going to request 2 cruisers this year, and the issue that we have right now, what I'd like to do is replace a cruiser that we purchased in 2013 that has 86,000 miles on it, and a cruiser that we purchased in 2014 that currently has 75,000 miles on it. Our cruisers are being driven every day. It's not exactly easy miles. The officers are not, don't get me wrong, they're not going out of their way to damage the vehicles, but it is rather hard miles that we're putting on as we respond to emergencies. So that's a lot of miles to have on cars that we're operating oftentimes at high speeds. And I haven't helped myself with this issue, to be honest with you. When I was hired, I lifted the mileage cap that we had. Chief Brooks had a mileage cap. Officers were only supposed to drive around roughly 60 miles during their shift. I lifted that when I came here. We're patrolling 24 square miles. It's difficult for officers to patrol the whole area of town. And to be honest, what I've been told behind the scenes is they weren't patrolling the whole area of town, because if they did a whole loop all around town, they'd use most of their miles, and then they were stuck sitting on 196 or Route 9 for most of the night because they couldn't afford the mileage to take another drive around. My feeling is we should be patrolling the whole area of town, not just 196 or Route 9. So I lifted it. Chief Brooks had a discussion with me early on, and then this week again, about the fact that I risked issues with maintenance on the vehicles, which is why he did it. And don't get me wrong, I'm not dumping on Chief Brooks. He had a good reason for doing it. He was trying to keep the maintenance down. I feel I have a good reason for lifting it and making sure that everybody gets the coverage and the service that they're paying for. But that comes at a cost, and we do put more miles on the cars, and you don't want to be up around 100,000 miles on a car that somebody's operating at high speeds responding to an emergency. So I'd be requesting 2, and I'm pretty much doing that. We just received a cruiser. Well, we were given permission to order a cruiser. It just came in. It'll be a few more months before that's on the road. Chief Brooks stated that his experience in the past, which is 30-plus years, was they were able to keep up on maintenance by doing a 1 cruiser 1 year to the next 1, 2, 1, 2. He said there have been years where, due to budgetary constraints, it was either 1 cruiser or no cruisers, and they always paid a price in maintenance on the back end. So
number 2.
Are you inclined to go with his model, 1-2, 1-2?
Yes, sir. I'll go with experience on that one.
No, it's
Deferring to him.
What I'm hearing in that regard is he had a plan that was in play, and if nothing else, with budgetary constraints, they got off with, which is what's caused the issue that we're experiencing right now.
Yes. Those are a lot of miles to have on frontline cars. So the supervisors have been good. I'm sorry.
No, good.
Okay. The supervisors have been good about when one car starts to have a lot of miles on it, we switch around so that a different cruiser is the primary car. But, we're looking at 86,000, 75,000. The next one is 63,000. They're going to just keep adding on as we continue to drive them. So I'm sorry.
So are you expecting an issue? What are the defects that you're anticipating with these cars? What is actually going to happen? Will they pass inspection?
They will, because we'll have to maintain them, but it's going to be transmission issues, various undercarriage,
Brakes, suspension.
brakes, continual.
So you're worried about a long-term cost?
Yeah, I'm worried about long-term. If we could save on the front end, but maintenance on the back end is going to cost us, and nobody wants to be involved. Coming from an agency where somebody was killed because of maintenance issues, or at least that was the allegation, I don't think anybody wants to be involved in that.
What about all the lights and all that stuff that can be transferred to a new vehicle?
Yes. Once we get rid of the Ford Crown Victoria, the last one that we have, which will be shortly, everything on the SUVs can be interchangeable. The issue we're going to have this year, changing over from the Crown Vic to the next Explorer that we have, is nothing moves from the Crown Vic. It's just a size issue.
So the initial cost, I get what you're saying there, but then after that, we'll just be able to rotate the accessories from
Yes, sir.
vehicle to vehicle.
Laptop and everything else that's in it, the record books and that type of stuff.
Yeah, that's all interchangeable. That's
So it's like
just
swapping a PC, except
Yeah.
it's $4,800.
So that's 2?
That's 2. One more, and then I'll be out of here. And that's a lieutenant position. And I'm going to be asking to put the lieutenant's position back into the budget for this year. So I know it's more of a personnel issue, but I figured with the cost that I would bring it up here today. And, I've been trying to find, my first 4 months, ways to be more efficient with the PD. And not having a second in command, somebody else at the administrative level, has not been very efficient, at least in these first 4 months. So what I'd like to do is create leadership opportunities by getting somebody else into the managerial position, prepare the next candidate, for chief, so we don't have to go outside the next time. Although I appreciate that, going outside this time. It's worked out well, and hopefully it won't be an issue for another 12, 13, 14 years. But with that being said, it would be nice to have somebody else in that position that could just step up when the time comes. I'd like to get my supervisors. They had to take on extra duties when the lieutenant left. And so they've all taken on extra duties, and I'd like to get them back supervising. The number one liability that usually comes up as a liability issue in a police department is lack to adequately supervise the officers. And right now, my supervisors aren't out with the officers as much as they should be because they're inside doing a lot more administrative duties that they've had to pick up from the past lieutenant. Another issue that I've had is complaints. The police chief shouldn't be investigating personnel complaints because you shouldn't have me being the judge and jury and doing the investigation and then being the judge. So I have the detective sergeant has gone to an internal affairs investigative school. He'll be doing all my internal investigations right now. The issue will be if either the complaint's on him or one of the other sergeants, you shouldn't have somebody at the same rank conducting the investigations. So once again, it would be nice to have somebody else at the administrative level to handle those investigations and get it out of the union, because to be honest, my supervisors are all part of the union. I would just rather have somebody at the administrative level taking care of that. And it would be nice to have a sounding board. It would be nice to have somebody else that I could talk to. You'd be surprised what kind of bad decisions I can make by myself. So it'd be nice to have somebody else that could go, that's a really dumb idea, Chief. Behind closed doors, of course. That's the way I appreciate it. So, yeah. So it'd be nice to have somebody else that I can talk to about various issues and bounce off. And, it's just monitoring the day-to-day activities that are ongoing at the station. I'm trying to deal with a lot of the bigger issues right now, and we don't really have another supervisor, especially during the day. People are coming to me, and don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining about this, but it would be nice to have somebody that could handle more of the day-to-day activities, so I could worry about some of the bigger administrative issues.
You have somebody from inside that's already working here that's, you looking to step up to that position, or are you looking to hire right outside?
I would hope that all three of them would put in for the position, to be honest with you, and we'll have a process and see how that turns out. I think all three could do it, but I'd hope they would all be interested in it.
I mean, would you be interested in taking somebody younger, newer, or somebody else into the force, or you're just looking to move somebody from one position to another already in the house?
I would like to move one of the officers up into administrative position, one of the supervisors into administrative position, officer into sergeant position, and then bring in, of course, now we get into hiring, which is its own issue for all law enforcement officers right now, all law enforcement agencies, but, so yeah, I'd like to step everybody up.
With the benefit of having sat with you in talking about the police study that was actually done, trying to frame it with last year's budget deliberations, we kind of tried to put realistic margins out there with the reserve money that was cut the previous year, the overtime money that was cut the previous year, but actually get to the point where we did eliminate the one position associated with that, knowing that eventually we'd be sitting there having this discussion with you. Anything, if we were to ask for a fourth item on that for staffing that isn't on the list, to give you that opportunity to be heard. It's a challenge in that regard. One of the things I've said openly, we brought in somebody from the outside for a fresh set of eyes associated with our police department. It's time to actually hear what they would actually have to be able to pick some of the groceries to be able to do their job. So I want to give you that opportunity.
You should know about the reserve position. I know that a lot of the money was put back in that apparently was cut maybe 2 years ago. We haven't used much of that money. We're having trouble getting reserves and getting reserves that want to work and are available to work. So much like you hear from everybody else, trying to find people to come in, and they're doing this part-time basically, and they're trying to find time, and a lot of people for the money, and I don't think it's about the money, so don't get me wrong, it's about just finding people that are willing to take the time to come in and do this job, and anybody that watches TV these days knows it's not exactly popular. We're not like firemen. Not everybody wants to be a police officer right now, so it's
Not your choice.
You and your choices tonight.
It's a tough time to be a law enforcement officer, and we're not getting a lot.
I don't recognize you as that kind of cold individual, but you're too for two tonight.
So we're having trouble finding people, and I'm already worried about when we go to hire a full-time officer. I don't know if anybody saw the news today. Westbrook PD is offering $14,000 hiring bonus. $7,000 when you get hired, $7,000 at the end of the year, and they're having issues. Brunswick PD is offering $5,000. A lot of other PDs I know are offering a couple $1,000. When I got hired, granted it was a while ago in the early 90s in Brunswick, I was one of 93 applicants. Now PDs are lucky if they get 2 or 3 applicants that can make the cut. So bringing people on is difficult at best right now. Everybody's trying to steal from other agencies and get blueprints, and then that comes at a cost too. So
I think we've heard that somewhere before.
Yeah.
Well, we're seeing it in all the departments.
Well,
I don't know if you
absolutely.
saw the article in the paper about MDOT for their plow drivers. They're 90 down.
90.
Because we're having a problem retaining people and just hiring people.
Well, when they only paid them $13,000, they're putting them in a $75,000 piece of equipment.
Well,
You'd be hard to be getting people. It's tough all around.
the population's going away and getting older because there's nothing.
So
you asked about other positions. I'm sorry, I wasn't
Yeah,
trying to ignore that.
No, I know you
Stay
weren't.
here.
I know you weren't. I also had the benefit of hearing
They
you
look
out
around
earlier
and say,
in
what
the
opportunity do I
discussion.
have?
The intention
No,
was
your
right,
generation
but in
doesn't
that
wanna
regard,
work.
that
They
do
wanna
and
get paid.
that you
No.
can't
He was being
And yes,
No, it is the
I
choice.
thought about asking for an extra patrol position when I came up here tonight, but trying not to be greedy, I'm trying to ask for what I think we need. Yes, would I love to have another patrol position?
Yes, I would. We're always right on the edge. We're about to send an officer to the police academy next week, so we're going to be down a body. We can't really afford. We don't have much leeway. So when we lose an officer like that, we're going to lose for the next 18 weeks. Now, all it takes is an officer injured, leaving, which we could be facing soon. We're going to have to move everybody around to try to have basic coverage. And again, in years past, we could count on reserve officers, and there were a lot more that were more willing to work. We don't have that luxury anymore. So, yes, it would be nice to have the extra body. That would be wonderful, but I'm trying to be realistic as well.
The new guy that was just hired, is he reserve or is he going to be a full-time?
A few weeks ago, we brought in a new reserve. Yes, he's a full-time officer in another agency.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of meeting him the other evening when my registers went down and I ended up buying him his drink.
Yeah.
Do you have any choices?
Are you being snippy?
Community policing, and I use that term, it's going to be packaged when we have the discussion amongst the school department, I'm sure, SROs.
Yeah.
Looking at it 1 year into it. What's your take on moving forward, knowing that I'm anticipating the conversation to come up by then?
So you mean a school resource officer, not necessarily community policing?
No, I said community policing for a reason. In that regard, I think that we do a good job, no matter who pays for it, that one basket of goods that the police department has an involvement within our school system.
All our officers are great, to be honest with you, as far as being out in the community and all the work that everybody's doing. So I've been thoroughly impressed with that so far. School resource officer will be great for the community, will be great for the school, but I try not to be facetious when I say that. Not so great for the police department itself. And it's from this aspect. It'd be great for the community to have another officer in the schools meeting with the children on a day-to-day basis, building relationships. That would be awesome. It'd be great for the school to have somebody to count on if something, God forbid, happens, and to just, again, work with the kids on decision-making, choices like the fire chief's talking about here. That's all wonderful. From a police department perspective, it doesn't really help us on the road, and this is why. Usually, you don't want to have somebody in the schools that's a brand new officer. You want somebody experienced that knows how to work with people, knows how to answer questions, that's got some lifetime experience on the road. So you generally don't have a brand new officer in the school. So you end up with a senior officer in the school. Then we take a senior officer that's probably got a little more vacation time and leave time than everybody else. We ask them not to take their time during the school year because that's where they're supposed to be. So now we have a very small window of roughly 2 months where they're not in school in the summer, and our officers are using most of that time to take their time off, which is well deserved. So, yes, it's great for the school, great for the community, not so helpful to us on the road if we have a couple injuries. Now, of course, I'll be honest with you, if we have injuries or something's happening, we're going to pull them out of the school on an emergency basis until we can get the basics covered. But so don't get me wrong, I'm not against having somebody in school. I think it's great that Lisbon has had 2 up until recently, and it's great for everybody involved except the officers necessarily on the road.
How are we addressing it now with one split amongst all the campus? How's that work?
Officer Picard rotates around,
Yeah.
trying to meet all the school's needs. You know how it is when you're trying to meet multiple people's needs. You try to make everybody a little bit happy, but you're not making anybody really happy. And then Officer Bernard goes in on overtime. Right now the school's budgeting that overtime. I think it's roughly 10 hours a week that she goes in and takes care of the DARE program and the SAD program. So that's how it's been for the last year, 6 months.
Right. Basis of the school year.
Yes.
Those are the 2 heavy questions. And I said, I know we talked about it in this, but I just wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about it publicly.
Yeah.
I got one for you. It's what's your take on the comm center?
That's supposed to be in 2 weeks.
I know.
That's all you got to say. That's all you got to say, bro.
Thank you.
I know
2
there's
weeks.
going to be a lot of communication.
Yeah, that's fine.
I've heard a lot from both sides. So coming in as an outsider, to be honest with you, I haven't felt like I had a dog in the fight. So I've just been trying to soak everything in and look at it all. And shortly I'll be given what I think is my opinion on it.
Absolutely.
I should also tell, if I have a quick minute, just to explain, when we go to hire, it's not as quick of a process as it is for most other agencies. The police academy is only run twice a year. It's run in January, and it's 18 weeks, and then it's run in August, 18 weeks. So let's just say we go to hire this spring. If we find somebody, if they've been to the 100-hour academy, then we can put them on the road after a brief FTO process. We'd be able to use them to some functionality until August when we sent them to the full-time academy. But until then, we wouldn't get much out of them. So, because liability-wise, you can't just throw somebody out on the road. If we hire somebody that's got no experience, we're starting to recruit heavily, or we're going to start next month. We're going to all the area colleges, and that's a whole other discussion for another day. But if we get somebody with no experience, there's really nothing we can do with them until August, and that's only if we get them into the academy. They'd be basically, to be honest, useless to us until they graduate from the academy, which is next December, and then we still have to do a field training program. So we're talking a year out now if we hire somebody without any experience. So it takes a while to get people up and running.
That scenario you presented too is a cost to us, and they could get, realistically, they get some experience and then go somewhere else too.
They could. Now the positive with that, if there is a positive to it, is if they leave after we send them to the police academy, the first 4 to 5 years, we get some of the money back, but what we don't get back is the time that we put into the training, and then we're short again. So.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Chief?
I have one. When you looked at the mileage cap, do you have any idea what the difference in mileage is now?
I've been trying to keep an eye on it, but I don't really, I'll be honest, I don't have a good number to give you right now as far as what it's cost. I was trying to come up with a number of what has it cost us.
Right.
I can't give you a set number of what it's cost us versus, and my argument to that would be what it's gained us. I've had numerous people, come to me and say that they're seeing cruisers now where they never did before. So,
Well, one of the things that sparked thought was when you had said Chief Brooks had that plan of 1 cruiser, 2 cruiser. That was with that mileage cap in place.
Yes.
With that being lifted, that's going to alter that capital plan.
It will. I can tell you nobody's taking advantage of it. I mean, they're not coming in.
Sure.
After a 12-hour shift and tires are smoking and everything, they're driving so many miles. So we haven't seen a huge shift from what I've been told the previous numbers were.
Okay.
Thank you.
That, help it walk a shave or just red?
At this point, Brian Layton, Public Works Director. At this point, I don't know where to start. I was hoping it would be a little bit more positive discussions from some of the other departments, because mine's pretty much going to be negative. And it's based on just the sheer number of areas where the Public Works and some of the other aspects of my responsibility lie. But I don't know where to start, to be honest with you, with the whole group.
It's your time.
We've got equipment needs through all departments. We've got infrastructure needs. It's infrastructure, Sean. Infrastructure.
Infill structure.
There you go. Infrastructure.
Infra.
Okay. I'm a fireman.
Yeah.
What was your choice? Sorry.
I mean, the needs I see, building-wise, and I've been here long enough now to see, even this building. I mean, we talked about it a little bit. Building that was built in 99, 2000, that's had just work after work after work every year, money after money. It's money that's not going somewhere else, and I don't know the fix to that. And that's, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm going to have a lot of I don't knows tonight because I just don't know. I don't know the right answer. We have equipment needs throughout Public Works. Some of it's difficult to justify based on, you're looking strictly at miles, but the job that the guys are doing, the work that's being done with that equipment, We don't roll in the wintertime. Public safety doesn't roll. Last storm, we did take a beating in social media. The only time I look at it is when Diane makes me. And quite honestly, that's it, because it's thoroughly frustrating, because it's only half the information, if even half. Last storm, I'll throw it out there, we got hopefully plenty of time. We're already trucked down for the year, waiting to be built. We tried like hell to be ahead of the game this year. I was looking back through some of my notes, and we went out to bid in early September, or awarded the body install in early September. The truck was delivered in the end of October, beginning of November. We were informed the week of Christmas that the truck would be delayed at least another 4 weeks at Viking because they were back ordered on equipment that they needed. Long story there is that their supplier was not able to keep up with their demand. They've got 3, 4, 5 trucks sitting there waiting to be outfitted, and we're one of them. So we've been down a truck since the beginning of the season. We got truck stuck during that heavy wet storm, the truck that does Main Street, and that's why Main Street was in such a disaster for pretty much throughout that, after that storm. He was stuck for 4 hours. Tried with our equipment to get him out, and eventually had to pay a contractor to come and pull him out at a $700 cost to the town. Sidewalks, that service was I'll be blunt, the town probably never should have taken that responsibility on. We might have saved a little bit of money at the beginning, but we'll never probably save what they were hoping to save throughout the process. Piece of equipment needs to be replaced. It's about a $150,000 piece of equipment. Seems like everything at Public Works is going to be $150,000 to $200,000.
Do it for under 100, we proved that.
Nope. So you got a piece of equipment that needs to be replaced, and we've had a problem filling that piece of equipment pretty much since day one. I believe that service was discontinued in, I want to say 08, 09, somewhere around there. I don't recall.
I was on the board, so it would have been 09, I think.
Yeah.
What piece of equipment is this?
Sidewalk, trackless,
Oh, the one that we were having
the one that's always broken. And part of the reason it's always broken is because it was pretty tired when it was purchased. It was purchased used, and there's never been a consistent operator of it. And we were fortunate to find someone to operate it this year. That's coming to cost because the thing is in the shop quite often. There's an experience level there there isn't any. The guy's never operated it before, but we were unable to find anyone to put in there. And then in years past, we've been stuck putting one of our plow truck drivers in there. We've got at least one that's I don't know how he does it, but David will put in significant hours in the wintertime when he's asked to, and that's just not right, to be frank, to have a guy plow for 20 hours, 24 hours, and then maybe catch a nap or a snack or something, and then go run the sidewalk machine for 10 hours. But that's been the reality of it, based on, again, what I've picked up in the years where I wasn't involved with Public Works and my involvement since being put in this position.
On that soundbite,
Sure.
what's the cost if you were to look at sidewalks by itself to actually consider going back to privatizing it?
I don't know who would do it.
Call Granville up and see if he's gonna say, all right, you guys got rid of me. Yeah, I'll give you a good price.
Who'd have made the decision to make it our responsibility?
It's a recommendation by the director at the time to the town manager at the time. I would say that they saw the dollars that you could save, because I believe.
Were you looking for a name?
And I'm just spitballing that there was.
It was a raw deal to Granville.
It was about $80,000. I want, and I may be off. I want to say it was close to. I think 80 is still too high. I think it may have been more like the $40,000 to $50,000 range for a contract. I'd have to really go back and look it up. And I believe that was roughly what we paid for the equipment at the time. So I mean, that was the 1-year payback was the thought, and then you're fill the position, fill the machine with someone at
Maintenance costs and labor,
15
you
to
don't
20.
have a $50,000 payback at all.
No.
Well, I know the infinite spare time that we don't have.
Well, that's just it.
Considering this time next year, would we be in a better position if we were able to consider actually, got a piece of equipment at the end of its life cycle, instead of buying a new one that just gets destroyed the same way associated with this, spinning it off if somebody's able to pick it up.
I think that was my number one goal of this whole night. If that's all I get, then great. I think it's something that we need to.
Service to at least not to actually consider it.
I don't see how we don't look at it just to price it and see where we land.
To anybody else out there that
Yeah,
offers
I mean,
that.
because obviously we know we're going to get 150 grand just to replace the damn unit, and then we don't have anybody to run it.
Anybody opposed to at least?
How about we
Sorry,
teach
man,
someone
I
how to
got
use it?
Yeah, but you still have to pay that
If you're gonna buy a new
money
one-
to buy a new one because
The one that we have, and I'll back up. The one that we have, we would keep to just do the sidewalk sweeping in the spring. To be honest with you, it's perfect for that. It gets done in the daylight. It gets done by someone that's, on staff full time. I mean, there's a lot of differences when you get into the winter part of it versus the summer part of it.
I do my fire job.
We just.
Thank you, that's the second night in a row. Is it?
No, it was happening on Friday too.
Okay.
I
I-
haven't had an asthma attack yet, so
Gave you a starting point for this, so continue on, please.
Where was I now? Equipment-wise, I actually went back, because Sean likes to brag about his equipment replacement plan. And we did the same thing back in 2005 for Public Works. And I was looking at it, I pulled it out today when I was updating some of my other stuff, and we're only about 4 or 5 years behind what the original schedule was on some of these trucks. And I'll play devil's advocate a little bit too. I mean, in reality, looking at the miles, we started tracking the miles in 2011 in November, and then just look at it from, there was 1 year we missed somehow. But from 2011 to 2016, a lot of these trucks you're only putting on 15, maybe 20,000 miles in that time frame, which isn't a lot, but I'm right back to the work that they're doing. And in the summertime, a lot of times the trucks would sit because they primarily were winter duty. But over the years, that work levels increased as well. With guys are doing more. I mean, this year was a blessing and a curse. We got a lot of paving done. That's all we got done. There was many times this year with the staff that we have that if you had one guy that was on vacation, one guy calls in sick, and then I'm left with 4 people. And then to go out and try to set up a safe work zone, flaggers, the whole 9 yards. I mean, it was very difficult to get a whole lot done. I mean, we ended up shutting roads down most of the time because it was easiest and most cost effective for us.
Well, on that one more soundbite, that's the number one bitch that people are actually having is their roads. So if you actually say the fact that that's what you got, then you're focusing on number one item that they're looking at in infrastructure. So in that regard, it's money well spent at focusing on what they're asking for.
And that's great from their standpoint, but it doesn't help me.
help
It
you
doesn't
with
help
everything
me
else on the shopping list.
on my end of things where back to, what do you want out of our department? Because we can either be a capital department or a maintenance department or, and I don't know really what the happy medium is. Because, as I said, I mean, things that didn't get done this year were, I mean, I would say that our sweeping efforts were probably not as good as they've been in the past. Our brush trimming, that kind of stuff that a typical summer maintenance for a public works department, a lot of that stuff was reactive to specific complaints and yada, yada, yada. I mean, it was not,
We have anybody that actually does sweeping? Not us, privatizing.
yes, I know there are, yes, because you can rent out, I mean, you can have that service done for you again. It's another one of those services that can be done.
If it's one of the things that keeps getting pushed on the back burner, so that maybe have that same discussion around to see where we're at.
Well, and I'm going to be a bit less on it's the philosophy part of it where we go do our annual sweeping in the spring. I mean, that is, what we've always done. But then you've got and you heard when Tracy was talking, it's what are we trying to sell the public around us? And, what is Lisbon like and why come here or whatnot? We did that a little bit a few years ago where we were spending extra time sweeping downtown, every other week or, once a week or that kind of stuff. And those kinds of things, I mean, I don't know what the options are for that, to piggyback that part of it with the actual doing the annual work that we would do, which is, it's as much a requirement from our stormwater permitting aspect as it is from a make it look nice type of thing, for lack of a better term. And I had a train of thought and it's gone. And it's back to the same deal with the equipment. You're talking the sweeper, I believe it's a 2004. We got prices last year to replace it if and whenever. That's 2006, excuse me. It's a $285,000 piece of equipment to replace it. I'm listening to the needs of the other departments, and like I said, it's depressing sitting in the corner over there. But
they're all jabbing you with a bunch of choices.
And right back to what is our, I hate to say brand, but what is it that, how do you want, what do you want out of us, I guess is the question. That was only, I hate to say it, only down to the second line.
What's the life, I'm going to throw that out there. Life expectancy on both those pieces of equipment. So if we were to make this investment, I'm just trying to put big picture together.
Well, the trackless that we own is a 1996, and since we've had it, we've only put about 1,000 hours on it, which was from 2011 to 2016, we put 1,000 hours on it. It's got just under 6,000 hours on it as of December. The sweeper is a 2006. It's got about, I don't know if someone must have gone from miles to hours. Because we've gone from 3,500 miles or hours to 2,300. So I guess I got to have that updated. But it's the same. The same thing with that piece of equipment. It's rough. And it's a maintenance hassle.
Anything after 12 years, it doesn't matter really what the
Right.
operator is.
Right. Yeah. I'm just trying to get a gauge of it. We're talking about realistically 285,000, 150,000. That's a pretty good chunk of change for two maintenance machines. When I definitely want to see what contracted cost per year to farm that out somewhere else looks like. Because if we're farming that out and the cost is
Same money or less, doesn't make any sense.
when
to
their
buy our
machine
own.
breaks down, ain't my problem.
That's right.
Other than they got somebody there to make sure that the job gets done.
So it ties back into what you're asking. It's so simple. We want to.
Right.
The fact is, we want to be able to free up time to be able to get to some of the projects and the paving, to be able to juggle those needs. We're not having spinning the same wheels doing the same thing, whether it be winter, snow, mobile on the sidewalks and sweeping. What would we do to take some of that off?
The other item I'll go back to if we were sitting here today with our actual budget presentation, I'd be asking for a dump truck, a backhoe, and some decision on the trackless. And then the next item would be, which is a relatively small item, but is a paint machine. And that's what we use to do the crosswalks, parking spaces, and in stop lines, same deal. I know painting took a back seat last year based on, we got the majority of the major areas done, especially 196, all the stuff the public's going to see when they come here for Moxie Festival, that sort of thing. And for those that don't know, we've taken a different approach with how we're doing our painting in terms of it's bare minimum as required by the MUTCD manual for what those markings need to be. In the years past, they definitely looked better. They were a different style, but they take a heck of a lot longer. The paint is, it's paint's peanuts. It costs what it costs, but you've still got the amount of time the guys are spending doing that they're not doing something else, and that turns into being 2-3 guys, depending on the area. You got traffic control issues and the whole 9 yards. First year I had 2 volunteers to do it at night, so I had 2 guys that came in at night and did the majority of the painting at night, and I think that we'll do that again this year. That worked out. They were much happier doing it that way because you eliminate the hassles of all the traffic.
When you're talking painting, are we talking all of the crosswalks, center line,
I'm talking crosswalks, stop bars, and parking stalls.
Stuff you can't avoid because of center line, we can privatize all of that.
You can probably privatize this as well. I mean, privatize the whole public works, I mean, it's an option. You know.
The point that I'm making is, Lewiston pays a company to come in to actually do just the center line, because the other
Correct.
stuff is something that the actual PW crew during the summer, that's part of what the
Right.
expectation is, because you can tailor to that, not having to focus on the need with just the center lines.
Right.
Is where I was going with that. I wasn't.
No, and that's,
Again, it's trying to set the priority associated with it. I'm not,
Yep.
don't want to take away from this tonight is, we're looking to privatize the PW department.
No,
I
I-
don't-
it's-
that isn't where I was going with it.
some of my other, thoughts and just, again, questions in terms of public works is our, as mentioned already tonight, is our involvement with trash, Moxie, all the Christmas decorations that are put down, flags. I mean, I got guys that get called in whenever. I mean, it seems like we raise and lower the flags, every week. And that's, that is a public works employee paid at time and a half to come in and raise and lower the flags. And it's a 3-hour minimum every time they come in, 3-hour minimum every time they come in. So in general, it's 2 trips to raise and lower them because it's usually outside our normal working hours. Get our involvement with Moxie, which pretty much wipes out the end of June, beginning of July. And then they're, like I said, they're our maintenance staff for pretty much anybody's needs at town buildings around. That's one of the things that we've talked about. Mark and I talked about a little bit, the 2 Marks actually, a little bit about the need for maintenance help for the town buildings. There's a lot of the stuff that, we painted most of the offices and stuff here. Employees did that on their own time several years ago, but it's in need again. We've got constantly have. This building's a nightmare. And but we constantly have that stuff, and we don't have a game plan. We don't have the staff to be able to handle those components of running the organization. I'll detour just a little bit, and with this building, the wing at my end, the walls bowing out to the point where what I noticed was when I could see this, when the ceiling tile track had fallen down, it's the end wall had moved out far enough that the track has fallen down. There's been cracks in the corners forever, but we had our engineering firm bring in a structural engineer to look at it, and basically they believe they need to come, basically we need to spend more money to have them come and do a full design on making some repairs and some additions to the structural end of the building, and there was not adequate wind bracing installed when the building was built. It's a long report. We can get into that some other night. Again, involved with buildings is, I don't think it's any secret, is salt shed. We are at the mercy of being able to store 11 loads, roughly, depending on who's pushing it in with the loader, of salt, which is 30 ton per load, so I'm not good without a calculator. 300 and something ton is all we can hold. And then we're at the mercy of the salt delivery trucks making it in time. In years past, we would, and I understand why the guys would do it, they'd let the barn get mostly empty and then order a whole bunch. That way you're constantly moving out the stuff that's in the back. Over the last couple of years, we've gone to, at the end of each storm, we take inventory of what we can fit, call the salt company then, which is what we've done all this winter, and we pretty much ran out at the Christmas week to the point where they owed us, I believe, 10 loads, so I guess we still had a load left in the building, but and we're still, I don't even know if, I didn't find out yet today if we got any, but as of today, this morning, I don't believe we had received everything that we'd even ordered so far. And there's been emails sent out. We order through AvCog. There's basically everybody in the county buys their salt from them. And we received new contact information recently, so it's been a supplier issue that they've heard from multiple communities, and that's being addressed. I guess it's enough whining about Public Works for now, but solid waste, the biggest things that we've discussed there in years past has been a scale system as a means of making sure that we're getting the revenue that we should be getting out of everybody that's coming in there. And along those lines, we are at a bare bones minimum for staffing, and it's right back to, you know, what are the goals and objectives from that standpoint. We've heard discussions about hours, where we're not open late enough, we're not open enough days, you know, this, that, and the other thing. I'm not sure the right fix as far as that's concerned at this point, but anything other than pretty much doing what we're doing right now would require additional personnel or additional part-time hours, but we're already getting close to the limit on part-time hours on a weekly and monthly basis with the part-time employees that we do have. And I go back to the scale item as being, if we had a scale house with a full-time attendant, we would make sure everybody had their dump sticker, for sure. Make sure everybody was coming from Lisbon, for sure. So I don't know what the benefit on the disposal end would be in terms of our volumes, if we would see a reduction at all. But in the same respect, we would be, at least we'd be charging for what we're taking and what we're having to pay to get rid of. We've talked a little bit about additional cameras, and that's kind of a minor item. And then the yard paving is one that we keep discussing, and that's one that's we'll intend to do some of that this spring with what we have left over from the paving money last year. I'm not going to talk a lot about sewer tonight, just because we're going to have a whole workshop on sewer in 3 weeks, I guess. And I will just mention that Main Street sewer replacement is going to be a major priority for us, based on the anticipated construction with DOT, which we don't have any dates on, and I'm not going to comment on that. And we did talk a little bit about placing, we have a pickup truck that we not necessarily need to replace right now, but Mark has a need at the rec department for a replacement pickup truck, and this has a dump body insert, and we talked about just him buying the truck from us, and then the sewer department would go look for another pickup for us. Town buildings, 385 Lisbon Street and it goes back a little bit with Sean too, is each year we're invested in the buildings somewhat. In the energy audit, we invested a lot in a lot of good stuff, especially at MTM and the rest of the buildings. I mean, every year we do a little bit at Sean's fire stations. We did the host tower this year. One issue we've got is the floor at E.T. Smith. We've got some safety concerns with that floor, to the point where the real fix appears to be to remove the floor and pour a new concrete floor. I don't have any prices on that yet, but that's one item. But then there's 385 Lisbon Road, and that goes into a little bit broader discussion on just storage in general. As mentioned by Kathy tonight, we don't have adequate storage for, well, period. I guess that's the end of it. That's the end of it. We wedged the sweeper in 385 Lisbon Road because it is a heated space, and it's one of those items that we're trying, being able to store it in heated space is definitely better for the equipment. But we don't, that building was vacated for a reason by Lisbon Emergency, and we're using it because it's still owned by the town, and it's heated, and was dry. I don't know as though it's dry anymore. Yes, but it's a question of
How long?
and what do we do with it? I mean, what do you invest in it? I mean, if we don't, we haven't invested anything in it. And do we invest anything in it? My answer is no. Pretty definitely
Sell it
no.
off,
But it's
Definitely a
tear it
no.
down, build
But
something
we
new
still
there.
have the issue associated with storage. We need.
Absolutely.
So,
Right.
Is there a cheaper way to get storage?
Well, and that's the question. I mean, and that's kind of, and I know I keep going, bouncing around a little bit, but I'm back to the salt shed. I mean, same deal. The only place the salt shed can go is really where the existing one is, and that existing salt shed also is where all our barricades are stored, all our cones are stored, all our, whatever we can't squeeze into the garage is stored. I mean, we have space problems everywhere. This town office, I mean, every place in town, we have problems with lack of space. In the wintertime now, we can at least store all the trucks inside with the plows on, ready to go, which has been a tremendous improvement for the operation. And it took a fire for that to happen. I mean, I keep forgetting that, we just built that space because we had a fire and we were relocated in Old Mine Yard. So Public Works has been a bit of a, they've had a lot of upheaval in the last few years, and it's been a difficult road for them, for all of us, really. But I don't know the right answer for the space requirements. I mean, nobody wants to spend any money on building any new spaces. We found that out loud and clear 3 times. Won't be asking for any more public works space. But at some point, we've got to do something about the salt shed, and that's going to require additional space improvements. And along those lines, the other good news is that in 2019, November of 2019, we need to replace our underground diesel tank at Public Works. It's a 10,000-gallon tank. Currently getting prices for budgetary estimates on that, because my goal for that is to replace when we have to replace that diesel tank, as we relocate it, and we have a combination island with gasoline and diesel. And we talked about this. I don't know if anybody's still on the board. You, Chris? So, with a fuel management system that, then all the departments would all be updated. That information would go right to administrative assistant Darla, and then for our billing standpoint, yada yada yada. So that's I don't imagine it's going to be cheap, but that's something that we're going to need to locate on site at Public Works more than likely, and right back to the footprint of Public Works is already stressed, and then where are you going to put a salt shed and yada yada yada. The last couple of things I had were just basically around technology. Our hardware is in a very good spot, both the town, I'll say that the municipal server as well as the police server, because those two systems are significant. We do, however, need to upgrade our server software. We're running on server 07, I believe, somewhere along those lines, and our Microsoft Office suite is also the older version. We've got a couple different options for solutions. One would be going to an Office 365, which is a subscription, which has lower upfront costs, but then you have annual costs from now until eternity. You're talking about just for our email alone, and this discussion is based around moving the Lisbon PD to Lisbon ME from an email standpoint. But just for the email alone, for all the emails that we have, including what we anticipate bringing from PD, would be $2,800 a year just for the subscription for email. I'm getting prices for if we were to buy, exchange 2016 or whatever it is, install that on the server, but then the issue we have is that it won't exchange 2016, which is our mail, won't necessarily talk with Office, because that Office is so old, so now you're looking at having to upgrade both of them. There'll be more on that. And just to answer those, because I had putting this together, I had some questions about how we are handling our disaster recovery, which was brought up at one of our meetings. Currently, we're backed up locally, and that is synced nightly to an offsite data center. So if this place was to burn to the ground, we could basically get a couple computers, a laptop. It wouldn't happen, Sean, I know. But if that room was to melt down, we could move.
I don't know. You better hope that ET isn't the one responding.
We'll have that discussion.
We could be up and running at MTM or something with a couple laptops, basically running off our data that was backed up the night before. So that's basically the way that would work. And then I only had a couple, just because the trails have been a big part of basically my entire life here at Lisbon. Mark mentioned the access across the Androscoggin River Trail tracks. That's project that I anticipate doing with Public Works, but again, that's another one of those projects that finding the time to fit it in. And also, the Paper Mill Trail was originally built in 2002, I believe, and it's got to be on the radar at some point for surface treatment. And that's going to be the same thing with the Ricker Farm Trail and
The following year and then the
yeah, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And it's, I mean, I heard the complaints when, I didn't know if I was going to say this or not, but I will. I heard the complaints when we built the trails, that why are we building the trails, because Lisbon can't take care of what we have. And I kind of dismissed it. And there is a little bit of truth to that. We've had a hard time maintaining what we have. And I'd hate to see something that's that utilized, and quite honestly, that's something I feel pretty passionate about, and is such a benefit to the community, would be treated the same way that the roads and everything else have been over the years. So that'll be my soapbox for the night.
Just want to back up to the disaster recovery for a minute.
Sure.
Do we test ever?
No, we have not.
So it's all theoretical then?
Correct. Okay. It's all based on.
Do we ever want to think about at least implementing a once-a-year test?
Let's do it on a Friday.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. You hit the nail on the head. When we're not, nobody's in the buildings, no planned people to walk through. And we don't have to run with it now, but I just think it's something to have at least a once-a-year DR test is never a bad idea. I think ideal situation would be once every 6 months, but if you're going to look at it as just once a year, that thing we do, that way we know it works.
Yep.
And I agree with you on the trail said the irony would be hilarious that take better care of our trails than we do our roads. You know that would come on social media.
Well, and I'll be honest, when you talk about the parking, and I'll, there's no doubt about it, the Sebastian River Boat Launch is a fantastic trailhead, but it is a boat launch. And the only reason that place looks the way it does is because of the funds that we received from the state to improve a boat launch. It is not a trail parking lot. And you hear, and that's.
I saw people in -degree weather the other day. Like, where are you walking at 6 a.m. in this weather?
But it's a problem. It's a problem in the summer. It's a problem in the police department. I don't know if Mark's had to deal with it yet, but that's why there's a sign at every boat and trailer parking spot, because that was the only way that they had, they could really enforce it. And it's I don't really feel like I hold much of a dog in the fight anymore as far as that's concerned. That's Mark's.
Have we looked into getting any more parking? I know I've been bugging you about this for years, but I know, like, at the other end, there's no really place to park other than on people's lawns, and you see people, trying
The
to
other
park
end
down
meaning
there.
which end?
The Lisbon Falls end.
There's the because the
Yeah,
parking
but a
lot.
lot of people aren't going to want to walk through that neighborhood, and it's just people don't like to, it's the same as through the woods. It's, you walk through people's yards, basically, and it's,
I think signage would be good.
Yeah.
People park at the high school, walk down the track.
You got it.
Right there.
If there's a good connection through there, it would help.
That's the connection that needs
By
to
the
be
tennis
made.
courts.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the connection that needs to be made. And that would also help. I mean, we kicked it around a while ago, and then maybe now is a better time to talk about that with the school again. But the access down to the trail, past the restrooms that are now fully.
I've run through there, and there's a blazed trail. I know I'm the
Yep.
only one that does it. I come off of the walking path, I run right up to the track.
Yep.
Run the track, and I'm sure people are using it the same way. It's just a matter of putting an actual
Making it
connector there.
formally identified.
The school facilities on board with this idea. I've actually already had this discussion with both Tracy and Rick, knowing when Mark had the issue associated going across the Paper Mill Trail about spring last year. So I don't care where it goes. The fact is, I think we should be approaching both. But it seems to me that the Riverside Tennis Court that is town property on the school grounds, actually, we have the ability to mark it right there, that you got your parking, to be able to centralize it early in there.
Right, that would be a huge
And
benefit,
they're
I
on
think.
board, short version, they're on board with it,
Excellent.
so make it happen, whatever it was.
Well, and you will have another location down, same like Mark said, but getting people to it. And it's no different than
20 parking spots down behind Enterprise Electric.
Right.
That the old rail depot is already available.
And the biggest problem, the community school on Mill Street, there's more parking than they'd ever need, but nobody wants to walk that far.
Right.
is what it appears at least.
No, it's valid.
Well, again, signage could help there. People may not know, you can park there and go in. They think, oh, those are school spots. I don't want to take their spots.
Yep.
I think that is funny, because that was the only trail, that was the.
Right, it's the parking spot.
It was, but when the other piece came in, it's not, doesn't take away from the parking. I mean, I think that part of the trail is more wooded and secluded, as opposed to the other one, which does magnificent views no matter where you come at.
Yep.
So I just think that the whole thing itself is collected is great, but it's gonna be hard to sell that LCS connection.
Right, because it's so far away. So I mean to be doom and gloom, but I don't see at this point, and that's like, I mean, when we talked about the goals and objectives, when you first mentioned that, I was looking forward to the opportunity to hear what you folks have to say and what direction you can give us, because I feel like I'm wholly reactive at this time and not enough proactive, and that's frustrating.
Just pave more streets.
So you're nice, I was just gonna say fix it.
Again, last year was a win. In fact, it was the one thing people were complaining about most, and we addressed it. In fact, we know we were recovering from the periods where the fact is there wasn't enough put into it.
And I think what will happen is if the council decides to continue that level of funding for paving, which I would suggest and advocate for, I think the biggest thing to understand is that our total mileage may decrease some, because based on the way things went last year, I think there's more stuff that we need to put onto the contractor versus Public Works doing, whether it be, it's matching the driveways back in and, some of the other stuff that we can pull off our plate, which we've historically done, but based on the sheer volume of roads and in turn miles, that didn't play out very well for us.
I think could be just me, but we have 2 years of testing the chips here associated with that, but the audience started to learn the benefits associated with it versus the cost.
What I haven't found out is if you can do it on the trail, which I don't think would be conducive to bicycles and rollerblades, or because that's the one complaint we hear is the roller skaters. The roller skaters don't like it, or the skateboarders.
Yeah, my girl's one of them.
Yeah. It makes sense. there are a few. There's quite a bit of bicycle traffic, for sure. Any other questions of Ron?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Thank you.
I know.
Twyla and Lydia.
Rock, scissors, paper, shoot. Lydia loses. I saw her.
Do I need to go over there?
You can stay.
Tell us who you are and what
So,
you're doing.
Lydia Colston, new finance director of the town of Lisbon. Good thing is that capital improvement wise, we don't really need anything in the finance department. We look good. The only needs that I would possibly be able to say right now after being here for about 3 years is the same need that I've listened to in all the departments is just, I think, staffing, and it's 3 months, sorry. Yeah, didn't you know, 3 years. There's so many things when I came into the job that I would like to do and I possibly could do, and I just don't know. I've spent a lot of my time with this audit and getting my bearings and whatnot, so that may be a reality in the future. But I know a lot of my time is spent just in the day-to-day operations of the finance department, answering questions in the front, answering more questions in the front, and then answering the auditor's questions. So I'm not sure yet is the long and short of it. I think we are in a good position to do great things. I'm hearing a lot of wants from different departments. I've been working with different departments with the DARE program, with Tracy, with their grants. One thing I do want to go with all the departments is that I'm not hearing a lot of time available from each individual departments to pursue grant opportunities. There's tons of funding out there that I feel like maybe we don't go after because there just isn't enough time in the day. If we look at our wage, reports that we're looking at, all of these are based on a 40-hour work week. I can count on one hand the amount of weeks that I put in a 40-hour work week. It's always more. And I'm sure that's the same with all my department heads. And I do it because, one, I love my job, and I want to see things happen. And I'm handling the day-to-day business in my 9 to 5. So I'm coming in on Friday to do the stuff that I want to do as a finance director. And I think that's kind of a similar feeling that we're getting. I'm just not sure where I've heard a lot. I've had a lot of weeks to listen to of what people didn't like in the past, where they would like to go, and now I'd like to merge those two. And getting the direction from the council on where you guys want to go with that, working a lot with Diane to talk about our needs with staffing and where she wants to go with the town. And just looking forward to getting this done. Lack of a better way of saying it, just tell me where you want to go and we'll get there, Other than that, our department's pretty much, we have great people. We have some people that go above and beyond, and I'm seeing it throughout the departments, doing more than they're asked, and I love it. I don't live in Lisbon, but I do feel like I'm a member of Lisbon. My grandmother's from here and been around since I was, knee-high to Chris. And that's right. And I'm coming along with some more of those gems, as we go. But it's just one of those things, I love the community. I love what I do, and I just want to see more because I know we're able to. I hate talking in front of everybody. Eunice. So we're actually looking better than I had originally thought. We're not nearly as behind schedule as I thought we were. I am waiting currently. I have a service ticket open trying to get our systems people talking with their systems people to get us going. We do have our training platforms, and I have a meeting set up with about 5 town employees to really start digging in and playing around and seeing where our questions are and pretty much seeing what we want out of it and how we can get there. We're looking at right now a tentative live date for the financial section of it of March 1st. We originally had put July 1st as a live for payroll, but I think after talking with Alan and Diane, W-2 wise and whatnot, we're going to push that off until January 1st of 2018 for reporting for the payroll portion. We've not made any decisions regarding motor vehicles. As of right now, we're going to stick with Trio for that till I can do some more digging and research on that. Not heard a lot of good positives about the motor vehicle portion of it, so I'm not sold that that's where we want to go. I'm not keen on having 2 separate accounting softwares, but at the end of the day, if it's a subpar system, I wouldn't recommend going with it. You can reconcile 2 systems better than you can deal with a subpar system. So that just requires more research on my time, on my end. And there again, finding the time to do it at that point. We're getting there.
Brunswick didn't use Trio?
No, Brunswick uses Munis. Yep.
That's where I was going with it.
Yep.
Find out how they liked it. I couldn't remember if it was Brunswick or if it was Freeport that actually was on the Munis to be able to have them weigh in, because I do know that there's a different version.
There is.
Enhancement associated with that?
I actually have a lunch meeting tomorrow with the deputy finance director. We were coworkers at a prior CPA firm, so Anything that has to do with Munis, I shoot him an email and say, yo, give me your stuff and tell me what you need. What do I need to know, and he's been very forthcoming with anything, and it's been great, but.
That was one of the biggest knocks when we were actually doing the investigation of the Munis piece, was that the motor vehicle stuff was not as robust as, say, maybe the stuff that we were using.
And I've heard it all up and down the chain. I've heard it from, tax clerks to town managers. Anybody that's dealt with it, it's not really my favorite part of it.
Right.
So.
But if that's the only piece that you have to, then make a deal.
No, and everything else I've seen of the system from what I've been able to get in and play around with it, better reporting, better ease of access, better manipulation of information. I mean, one of the biggest time sucks that I've dealt with is just Trio, and the information's there, but getting it in a format that I can use has been challenging. I'm getting there. I'm getting better with it, but even still, there's so many limitations with it. It's so disjointed of a system, and Munis just isn't. It speaks much more smoothly, I think, with its intercomponents and whatnot.
The biggest knock was that Trio was unresponsive to Trump tickets, and it was incredibly difficult to get data. So if we can eliminate, it sounds to me like we're on that path to eliminating all those hurdles, so that Munis is there to be able to allow you to gather data in a more efficient manner. Therefore, get better reporting to us, which helps us do real-time better budgets.
Definitely.
The only problem there, if we have to use Trio for just the motor vehicle and Munis for everything else, great. It sounds like we're on a pretty decent schedule as far as understanding.
My goal.
what it'll be.
Yeah. Just to give you a little hint of the difference between Trio and Munis. I'm new to both systems. I've seen the reports, the output of it, but I've never actually used them. So I tend to go online and look. I want to look at your support system, your troubleshooting base, whatever. Non-existent for Trio. They have help sheets, which is like a 2-page PDF of nothing. I went on to Munis and did one Boolean search and 5,000 hits.
Their knowledge base
It's huge.
Help me find the needle in this haystack because there's too much information.
There is definitely too much information, but I did note that their search functions was good. But, I'd rather have the information and be able to sift as I can, because now I'm learning stuff I didn't even ask.
As you develop more of that experience with that, you'll know the right question.
Exactly.
So you'll get to the point where you'll understand how to narrow down that from 5,000 hits to, okay,
Yep.
I know it's funky this way, so I gotta throw in what I'm looking for.
Exactly.
Next thing you get 10. So
Yeah.
It's great. It sounds to me like you're digging in.
Oh yeah. I was telling Diane, that's where I tend to be the geek in my family, is that I was excited about the whole software conversion. Why? Because it was new, and I know nothing about it, and that's what I do at night when I'm watching TV, is learning about the
I think we're excited with the reporting that's going to bring.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the best, most accurate.
Not just accurate. From what I'm seeing, is it's very very readable. It's not a pile of numbers that are meaningless to anybody but, the polyester suit in the corner.
This time next year, if you can farm it out correctly and add it correctly, let's put it that way. In fact, this department heads build in their budget right in the software. It's very user-friendly.
Yeah.
Just that one aspect versus what we have, that we've seen for the budgets in the past. That'll be a win-win.
Definitely. Yeah.
And I'm encouraged with the March 1st deadline. Timeframe. I did not see that as a realistic goal with.
Well, my plan, obviously, with the March 1st one is we're going to be running the two systems simultaneously with that. And
I would expect that with your experience.
Well, it just makes it easier, And,
No, you have to run parallel. You have to run parallel, by all means.
Yep.
Again, with the time frame, we're going to hear it next week. Associated with that is that we're going to have opportunities, I'll say, from what the management comments and their letter is going to be opportunity to be able to address them, whether it be the reconciliations or
Yep.
some of the other dialogues that when we're having this discussion 1 year out,
Mm-hmm.
we're interested in seeing a shopping list that you developed rather than the one you inherited.
Can't wait. It's gonna be good.
Thank you.
Mm.
Okay, you're it.
Here you go. I'm just going to copy and paste this, so let me read it. We have two things on the list that we want to bring to your attention from the town clerk's office. My name is Twyla Lysette, and your Lisbon town clerk for the past 30 years. The program that we started for restoration in town records began 28 years ago in 1989, and we restored the following records to date: 25 vital record books, 18 town meeting record books. We had bound in leather 10 town meeting books. We had restored 1 road book. That was our last project. We've purchased 26 heavy-duty 3-ring hardcover vital record binders that protect our documents. And we had 27 selectmen meeting books bound with burgundy leather covers, and then we switched over to placing selectmen and council meeting documents or council meeting minutes into heavy-duty 3-ring burgundy binders, totaling 14 in the vault today. And we have purchased 21, we have actually bound 21 appeals and planning board books in black leather. Browns River was purchased recently by CoFile a few years ago, but our account representative, Bill Stewart, continues to handle Lisbon. His revised estimate, just a couple of weeks ago, I had him look into the vault and take a look at what we have left to restore and bind, and his estimate to finish the work there comes to around $50,000. But we need to focus, I think, like we've always been focusing, on our priorities for vital records and town meetings. In the past, that's what we've primarily done. His estimate for the $50,000 covers other assessing and poll books, and some of those are very valuable. I think he said that we have the best book for fences that he's ever seen in the state of Maine, in New England. That book showed those little pictures of the ears and the drawings and where the cattle, who owned this cattle. And so each of the little ears were clipped in a different manner, and it's all recorded in a book. He was thinking that was like the most fantastic thing we have in our vault. I'm sure that's on the list for restoration, but it's in very good shape, though, still. We budget money each year for this, but it's in the same line as we do our code book updates. And so far, the code book updates have increased and consumed all these funds. So perhaps the council might think about separating the funding for this kind of work. And I think it is extremely valuable, in my opinion, and it's worth your effort and consideration to keep your vital records still being restored. Some of those pages are loose, and some of the materials are falling out, and the glue isn't as good as it used to be. And the second thing that I wanted to bring to your attention is our vault needs updating so we can increase our storage capacity. So project number 2 would be in your capital improvement budget for a mobile storage system delivered and installed for $30,000. In 2005, the selectmen began approving funds for roller shelving for vital records. Then additional roller shelving was purchased for valuation and assessing books. The council funded a mapping unit, which serves as a reference table. At this point, our shelves are full, and storage for boxes is becoming an issue. Assessing expressed the desire to store their deeds in the vaults, along with their assessing cards and their commitment books. We can hold currently around 450 boxes. One way to increase our capacity to 588 boxes is to install this roller shelving that we've been looking at. It can be created specifically with our needs in mind. The estimate you would have will replace 3 rolls of metal shelving with a mobile shelving system. The first unit would be designed for books and could easily be changed so that the lower half could accommodate drawers for maps and file drawers for easy access to old assessing cards. And we expect that we could put the commitment books on those in that particular book, that particular side of that roller shelving. I presented this information and idea 10 years ago, and at that time, we decided to ask departments to keep their materials that rotated out on a 6-year basis in their departments, like purchase orders and that sort of thing, and so they're stored in other areas, not in a vault or fireproof safe. Our storage needs need to be addressed, though, because I think I only have space for about 10 boxes right now. The system, like this roller shelving, is being used in green if anyone wants to take a tour of the green office. Mr. Stewart's been working with Lisbon since '89, and his suggestion for improvements have worked in the past, and I think his opinions are valuable. And I believe that the mobile storage system is worth your time and review, and this system is flexible enough in its design, and I think it fits Lisbon real well. I just want to take a minute to show you what great progress you as council and selectmen have done over the years. You really have made a difference in Lisbon. And you can stop at any time and to see this. But I just wanted to show you if we can. Lydia, do you want to hold that open on that side? Yep. In the bottom, you'll see this is in 2005, and I've taken the same area and giving you snapshots as we've gone to 2010. This is 2007 in the same area. We snapshotted it up. I just wanted you to know that you see nothing on the tops of these, but now we are limited with space, and so we're storing stuff on the top of this, all of these shelves, which puts heavy weight onto our books that we've already had bound. So we're running out of space, and that's why I think we need that roller shelving unit. And so the roller shelving would put all that book storage out in the front for commitment books and that sort of thing. This was our biggest change when I moved in 2005. We took out that centerpiece, and the council approved the roller shelving for assessing books, and so it needed out. In last 2010, you purchased that. So we're thinking in terms of redesigning the rest of the vault. So we've taken care of the front half of the vault here. So in 2005, notice all the space that we had here extra, and then we started filling it up, and we started using it for storage, but now we have no storage for our regular election supplies and stuff like that. It's all being now used for boxes for permanent storage. So that kind of gives you an idea what we wanted to purchase. This system here would have 3 regular rows for boxes, and then this outside row would have both shelving on the front and the back of it. And then we were talking with assessing, and we would probably put rows of filing, these filing drawers in the bottom, and we would probably put rows like this for mapping drawers. That's it in a nutshell.
Why don't we scan it all and store it on a hard drive?
Yep, I can get you a Laserfiche estimate. The city of Bangor is doing that. It's not cheap.
Are we required by law to save?
Even if you do that, you still have to save the paper copy.
That's what I thought.
You always put it off-site and then build a little vault somewhere else and store it off-site.
And a monthly payment.
Yeah. Just ballpark what these roller shelves cost.
It looks like $20,000 for the equipment, the materials, and $10,000 for installation. But this is just a rough estimate, and this is just your beginning piece to looking at your capital improvement. It does look like that. We need to do something, though, soon, very soon.
My dad may have some storage space available. It's not realistic.
Well, most of his is not heated, right, and climate controlled.
It was a joke.
Are you tasked with record retention for everybody, or is it by department?
For what, I do records retention for anything that's in the vault and what's in our control in our department. But most of the other departments ask for information, like in the finance department. Yeah, and then, yeah, so they come to us to find out what it is for the retention of the materials that they need.
And then work backwards to you or Ryan to figure out where the heck it's going. Is that a safe assumption?
The storage space is so limited in this building. We bought our new voting booths, and they took up the space where our DS200s were, and so now we don't know what to do with our equipment. So where do we store it? We needed both, and we're looking at options. So when it comes to your minimum wage and your salary and that sort of thing, I don't think that you're going to see any impact to the next budget year, because you will have a election in June for the school, and I'm told that the Secretary of State's office is anticipating one referendum question on a state ballot. But it still won't be a very large election to worry about, so our personnel will be a lot smaller.
Now, is that because there's no increase, or the fact is that because it's a state school budget that it's actually theirs to pay for?
What now?
Is there no impact to us because it's not our bill to pay, or is there no impact to the election based on the change in the law?
I think it's because you budgeted so much more this year because of the presidential election,
Right.
which we're not gonna have next year, so.
We had
Like, what she's saying is you're not gonna see an increase in her line item, even with the minimum wage going
Right.
into effect. That's what she's saying.
That's, okay.
Yeah. You
Because
won't see
we
it.
had to budget so much more for that presidential election this year. I
Right,
believe
right.
that's the.
We had in that same
I
line.
like that answer better than the fact that, again, it goes with the basket of goods thing. The fact is if it's only 1 year out, because the only thing on it this year is a school vote, the school's having to address it, letting them know the impact on their bill, would be the only way that I would look at that, just for the communication flow. That's what I was hearing. Good.
I wasn't anticipating, though, the thought that we would have a state ballot in June. So I was thinking that the school would pay for their election like they usually do. But now that we have a state ballot on, I'm thinking you're going to have to share the cost of the personnel and the whole election with the school for that one. There's no guarantees that that ballot will arrive in June. The legislature can postpone it till November. So you
it's
really
still
don't
moving-
know.
It's still moving.
Mhm. I guess you just budget to share it.
Right. Thank you. Anything else? Anything else from anybody on what we've heard for talking tonight? I appreciate everybody. Please, go.
I'd just like some direction on what you would like me to do with the salaries, benefits, not benefits, but benefits would be impacted by payroll benefits, I should say. Do you want me to factor in a cost of living? Because I gotta really get started on the budget.
Yes.
There's a lot of work that's gonna have to go into the pays because we don't have the munis now, so everything's gonna have to be done like it was last year, and it's a real pain. It's very, very time consuming.
For the first wave associated with a
We'll do the-
prelim budget,
Yep.
let's start with the model we used last year.
Okay.
At 2%.
Okay.
That's starting point for discussion purposes to give you
Yep.
the model to move forward.
And then we'll do the minimum wage increases
Right.
as we discussed tonight, and then look at any other areas that will impact by increasing, like in Mark's department, and increase a certain level, then he's got his long-term people that you're gonna be really close to that, so we're gonna have to look at maybe.
Yeah, and that's.
And the same thing will happen in Twyla's because of her wardens, so we've gotta.
In Mark's case specifically, I think it needs to happen because the majority of his work is associated with that. I can't justify saying you get a quarter raise based on the minimum wage, associated when somebody's getting a $1.50 raise coming in the door.
It's gonna be,
I have a question on, what are we basing the 2% cost of living increase on? Is there, a federal rate that we're using? I mean, just trying to figure out, is that,
National averages are typically 3.
Yeah, that's trying to actually meet that without actually hitting the high end. In that regard, it's a moving target. We did the discussion last year was from flat to 2.
Right.
We settled on the 2 because it was at least a COLA. We at least put it on the discussion point.
I think for in the interest of helping Diane be able to get this thing kicked off and started, I think 2 is a safe bet. Basically use the same formula you used last year, and you still have to factor in the minimum wage piece, which I'm sure we're gonna discuss ad nauseum.
mean, we're not, help me here, Maine PERS, got a, the workers' comp, it's got a significant bump this year.
Maine PERS has another bump. Our workers' comp is
It's
going
like
down.
8.9%, that's right. It's like 8.9% if I remember right, Maine PERS is the jump this year.
It's go, yeah, probably. It's going, yeah, and it's gonna go up for the next few years.
Right. Sorry, Nick. Go ahead, Larry.
Well, Mark's line. What is determined, how do you determine what a COLA is and how much?
At this point, it was just to actually open up a discussion to give us a model associated with the budget to move forward as a discussion point. In that regard, go for it. What do you have a thought? Finish your thought.
Well, the last 5 years, the federal COLA has been below 2%. And it's determined by, according to the feds, it's determined by the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers. Okay? Now that doesn't include management in that definition. So if we, for the last 5 years, have been paying 2%, and the COLA for the government is under 2%, why are we doing this? We can't keep doing this if our revenue, if we don't increase our revenue, because we're going to go bankrupt. 2% of $35,000 is one figure, but 2% of 90 or 100,000 is a hell of a lot more. Okay?
I will entertain that the motion is not actually sustainable, but it is not a bankruptcy situation.
Well, it will be eventually. But you don't increase revenue and you're doing 2%
The other
every
part
year.
to your comment, sir, I would actually say the fact that I can't speak of anything prior to last year. I know we did 2%, but it has not historically been 2% annually either. So that would be one piece. Give me the flavor. Where has it been that 6 years of the history here?
It was about 1.5 to 2, varying depending on the federal rates, is what we were usually going by. It was 0 for a couple of years there in 08 and 09.
I got 0 this year.
Yeah.
I have the rates if you want me to watch.
Done is unassociated with that, but in that regard, it's actually intended to be along the line for that. Agreed. And the fact is to be able to say that you pull out your management versus clerical, I think that would be a laughable discussion to say that the federal government actually draws that distinction. Because these are the same folks that just made $40 trillion or whatever it was disappear associated with people's retirement funds for the way they do math.
I understand.
It's not always a sound house that they run either.
I absolutely appreciate what you're saying. I don't
Right.
think that we're looking
Yeah.
at this.
Anything
This is
more
not
for
a,
discussion.
this is not a done deal. This is a,
We just
we're-
need to know a starting
Diane was looking
point.
for direction on how should she start. So this is the leaping off point, nothing more. And I'm sure, like I said, we're going to go back and we're going to look at this. And I appreciate you bringing it up. It's a valid point. We should absolutely consider federal rate
We got
coming
issues
together.
with
I think this is a great place to start.
Everybody
We'll
has
leap
it.
off
We
from here
don't
and see what we
stay
get.
competitive.
And then we'll take what you're bringing to the table along with what I'm sure we're all going to come in with and kind of say, what do we need to do?
Okay. The other part that came out of last year's discussion was when somebody starts comparing COLAs between one basket of goods, they hear mine. The fact is that it was a different COLA on the school side. We did hear it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so in that regard, it needs to be something that actually is talked about with our business partner there, so
Absolutely.
we're consistent with what they're looking at too for the equity in some regard.
Comment on that, I did not mention that Haley McCrader, the business manager at the school, and I have set up monthly meetings going forward to kind of compare our books and our goals and our needs, and that way we can kind of be collaborating a bit more and communicating more.
Thank you. That's awesome.
I appreciate that from both you guys. I know we talked about it when you first came on, is get past the audit, get past this, get past that, but set them up because anything that actually improves that dialogue is going to make the discussion discussions go that much smoother.
That's a huge
Exactly.
step forward.
That's how we get to the point where we're all talking about the same COLA, and we're all actually doing, it cuts the work in half.
It surely does.
And I, 10-minute discussion last night after the meeting broke up with Alan Willett on their snow movement. What can we do? I couldn't begin to tell you, Alan. I know how we got to this point where it's a separation and you're each doing your own associated with that, but in that regard, it's one need for all the town, best way to be able to address it accordingly. And I know this is, when it came out, I brought the same discussion. Mark's got the same discussion going on at NTM. The fact is, there's only so many resources that Ryan's crew can get to associate that got us to this point to be able to address it moving forward. We heard from the first department associated with that, with the assessor may be part of the wage study. Are there any other folks that, or departments, I should say, that actually come out that are glaringly potential issues?
Just
need to be
the
reviewed?
wastewater treatment looked like it was.
Which is the one we addressed.
Yeah, but it's still, although one of the employees, when they get their license, they'll be bumped up, but it's still a bit lower. I mean, we made significant improvements, but.
I'd really like to see the Androscoggin County as a whole, each community, and figure out from there. I don't think it's, I just don't think it's fair to base off something offering Cape Elizabeth, like you said, they have more money in their pockets than we do, and.
They can afford to pay more, so their
Right.
salaries end up being higher.
Right.
What you can also see though, when you look under the hood associated with this survey, wastewater treatment, what's the number of connections that they're actually dealing with? What's the duties that they're actually doing that's driving this? What's the expectation for their level of supervision versus the rank and file that are actually having that pushed on them? What's the expectation? It's very different by job description, and it's very potentially useless information. It's compiled by all the municipalities as a resource, but it's highly subjective for interpretation.
You talking about the survey in general?
Lewison's in here. I did the work.
No, I know.
I can
I'm
run
just saying.
I can run circles around the fact is it worth the paper it was printed on?
And one of the reasons we didn't do Androscoggin County is because of this disparity. I mean, you've
Right.
got Lewiston, Auburn, which we can't compete with, but on
I'm
the
just
flip
saying, like-
side, you've got Minot, Turner,
I think.
Green that don't have the services we have, so their amounts are going to be totally different, and they're probably going to have a lot less full-time people and full-time departments.
But I'm saying, like, not looking at one sole, like, this is a good start, but I want to see what Androscoggin has to compare with this as well. I think it's going to take multiple, demographics putting together to figure out where we need to be.
I think we're looking for a blend. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
To Cassie's point, we do a weighted average for Androscoggin County in total. You know what I mean? Just I know they're there. Where they talk about the high, talk the low, put it in there for what's the average to be able to put it in there. Knowing, I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a lot to do for some not useless and not useless.
Jody had to
At least we see
manipulate.
it.
What MMA had. If you looked at the survey, it
It's
didn't come
different.
out in this form. It took her 2.5 days to do this for every single one, so it's going to take the same amount to do the Androscoggin, and then on top of that to do all the pays. I just don't know. I'll do my best to get it done. But this took a long time, and at the end of the day, we're still not going to have the answers because we don't know what the starting pays. We don't know the longevity for these people. I just don't think the MMA salary survey is the ideal way to really do a salary survey.
It's free for a reason, because
It
typically
is.
you would hire a company to come in to be able to get the pay study, but you're paying somewhere between $4,000 and $10,000 depending on the size of the study. To be able
Who's
to
going
get
to call around and get the answers that we need? I can
Whatever-
most certainly work on the Androscoggin County for you.
Hearing you again processing and the wastewater treatment? Are those the only two
Those,
that stand out?
there's some that are off a little bit, but not glaringly. I mean,
I would rather tailor to that list, based on list, and know what we have to flush out in the future to be
Yep.
able to help with that
Yep.
direction.
yep.
Now, back to that, Ryan, I'm circling back to you for a second. Knowing we fixed the one person coming in because of the training coming in, did we just create a new inequity in your house on that topic?
No, the sewer department is pretty well, I think we're in pretty good shape from that standpoint. The newest hire, someone with no experience whatsoever, so. I mean,
Okay.
That's the 50/50 position that's shared with public works.
That's all I needed to hear, is the fact is, by fixing one, did we cause something else? That's all I was asking. Anything else before we disperse? We're hitting that hour past productive point in the meeting, so I appreciate everybody for coming out. Thank you.
It is. My fingers are cold.
My feet have been
I mean,
freezing.
your writing's not helping.
Well, you know, I came in, I sat down, the very first thing I did was turn around and go get my jacket. I'm like, nope, not gonna make it.
Them chairs are uncomfortable. Can we talk about getting some new chairs? 3.5